They were just using all, assistant
Whatever y'all want to do.
I know that at least for the few years that I have been associated with her, to one extent, one way or the other, has always been that Texas. But I agree, there is a lot of writing that goes on.
Okay.
What the students have to
Good morning.
and so on. I'm not sure that we asked them to enter everything.
It's always great to see people who enjoy seeing each other and enjoy visiting. That's a great thing to see. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here. We're missing a couple of members that I'm sure will walk in as we get going here. I hope you all had good travels, and it is great to see you once again. I'm Jennifer Martin, and I'm the Senior Associate Provost at Texas Woman's University, and a few of you have not known me, but I was a graduate dean for 10 years before I moved into this particular position. And so it's always great for me to be back with my dean colleagues. That's a great group, and many of you are in that group. I thought this morning that it would be good for us to introduce ourselves to each other for two reasons. We have some people who are new. This may be your first meeting. And then we have some people who just have not seen each other in a good while. We've not had that many meetings, and you may not work with each other often. And so I thought it would be good for us to take time to introduce ourselves. And so I think I will start over here, let's see, to my right. We're going to go this way, and we'll go around.
Okay. Hello, I'm Alan Mickey. I'm here with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I'm the primary liaison between the Coordinating Board and GEAC, so please feel free to contact me at any time if there's some issues you'd like GEAC to discuss or just general business. I should say also while we're here, thank you and my apologies for us changing venues this morning. At the last minute, the Higher Education Coordinating Board itself needed to have an emergency meeting, and they had an executive session, so they took the boardroom away from us. They pulled rank. So I appreciate us meeting in these slightly more cramped and warm quarters. We fiddled with the thermostat, and I think we turned it the wrong direction, so we'll try to get that worked out. So thank you for your patience. For those of you who are senior members of GEAC, we have coffee and ice water over in the next room. Those new members, I'm afraid. No, I'm just kidding. If you'd like a cup of coffee or some water in the room next door, it's set up over there. So we won't take it personally if you get up in the middle of me talking to go get yourself a cup of coffee. So thank you all for coming. We do appreciate, by the way, all of you coming out. I know this is a very busy time of the semester. Graduation, faculty are scattering, travel plans, all of this, final exam week, grading. I appreciate your time and energy to come out. We really do appreciate it. And GEAC's important to us here at the Coordinating Board, so thanks for your efforts.
Hi, I'm Mohammed Abdurrahman. I'm the Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies. I'm a senior member. I already got my coffee. So, I'm an engineer, originally, so, but I enjoyed working with you for the past 2 years or so.
Joanne Canonis, Dean of the College of Graduate Studies, and the what do we call these things? The list of members shows me as interim. I am officially now a founding dean. I've just finished my first year, so I'm no longer interim. Glad to be here.
Austin Cunningham, Dean of Graduate Studies, UT Dallas. Been on the committee, I think, for 5 years plus, and it's always a pleasure to come and see good friends and have great conversations.
I'm Deborah Garrison from Western State University. I'm the Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of the Graduate School, and clearly a junior member because I have no coffee.
I'm Bill Harn, the Dean of Graduate Studies at Lamar. I've had that role since July.
I'm Kevin Hines. I'm the Assistant Provost for Graduate Studies at Texas A&M University, and I'm just crashing the party, sitting in for Karen Butler Perry, the Associate Provost of the Foundation.
Excuse me. I'm Charlie Backey, Dean of Graduate Studies currently at the University of Texas at soon to be UT-RGD in Grand Valley. I have actually been attending these meetings for 10 years now, and I've served briefly as an alternate, and so I'm fitting now that I become a member this opportunity. GEAC has done a lot of things in the last 10 years, and I enjoy working with everybody and meeting everybody. This is one of our great forums for sharing our experiences and learning about, particularly working with the coordinating board to do things that help ourselves. Really appreciate it.
And I'm Dimitri Litvinov, the Vice Provost and the Dean of the Graduate School at the University of Houston. I've been doing this for about a year. So we all have a graduate school before, so building this scratch.
I'm Connie Nelhart. I'm the Associate Provost for Research and the Dean for Graduate Studies at THECB, representing one of the voices representing private universities around the table. Actually, I think we learn a lot from being here. I hope we add. I don't know. We certainly appreciate understanding where our state university colleagues are. I don't know.
A while, a good while, Bonnie.
Good morning, I'm Sophia Montes. I'm the Senior Associate Registrar at the UT Health Science Center down the road in San Antonio. I'm a new member and I stole a cup of coffee inappropriately, so I apologize. Really looking forward to contributing to everyone's efforts here and happy to be representing the health-related institutions in the system.
Good morning, I'm Ronald McMahon. I'm the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University. Also happen to be in charge of graduate programs.
Good morning, I'm Victor Krybutak. I'm the Associate Dean at the University of North Texas, and I'm a Regents Professor in the College of Business. And I guess I've been crashing the meeting for 4 years, filling in for 4 different graduate deans, so I'm glad that I am now finally a member. And I guess you can tell I'm a senior in some ways. I have
I'm Jill Stannis Wallace, and I'm a full professor at the University of Texas in El Paso in the Department of Mathematical Sciences. So I'm a mathematician, statistician, biostatistician, and racking my brain trying to think director of, associate, no, this, that. Well, director of the graduate program in statistics.
But you know that's an important thing. We've tried on GEAC to have a variety of positions, and you can hear around the room. We have people in a variety of roles, and that just adds richness to what we do. I think we need a lot of lenses to get a really good picture. So we don't think that's not a good thing. That is a very good thing for us to have you here. We're glad you're here.
I'm Candy Tagobi at Sam Houston State University, and I'm an Associate VP and Graduate Dean there. And I think I've been on here 5 years, maybe, somewhere around there. And I just want to tell everybody that's new that this is really a great group, and I've learned a lot from this. And I'm glad that Jennifer's leading us here. She's been a great mentor for me.
Morning, I'm Kevin Viscalis. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies and Research at University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, the other private institution member. I've been around for a while. I think this is year 5 for me as well. Boston pointing me to the coffee, thank you, sir. And it's a pleasure to serve and a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm James Gilman, an Assistant Director here in the Division of Workforce, Academic Affairs and Research. And I've worked with all of you in various capacities over the years. Really pleased to have you all here. It's great to work with you all. I handle a lot of graduate issues, so this committee is near and dear to my heart and my work life. So whenever you have questions about the review of existing programs, whether it's those annual doctoral reports or graduate program reviews, those can be me, and we can talk and work things out.
Now let's go over to our guests, and we have a couple of other guests who will join us in a little bit. Go ahead.
I'm Gregory Maddox. I'm Dean of the Graduate School at Texas Southern.
Right, and we're going to get Dr. Peebles in a minute. Okay. Okay, well, it's good to see all of you. You know that we have a couple of members who couldn't be here, and I think Alan is right. For most of us, this is either exam week and commencement week, or you just did it. I just did 3 days of commencement in 2 cities, so I am feeling like we've got the semester done. That's a really, really good thing. So thanks for being here. I think at this point we would like to introduce Dr. Peebles, and we have asked him to come this morning to give us an overview of upcoming issues related to graduate education. And it's like we're going to get him to come up here and join us at the front. And maybe tell them a little bit about yourself too, because a lot of them have never had the opportunity to work with you.
Well, good morning, and thanks for being here. My name is Rex Peebles. I'm the new Assistant Commissioner for Workforce, Academic Affairs, and Research, better known as WAR. I still think somebody set up a long time one night trying to figure out how to make all that into WAR. But I promise I'll try not to wage any here today. Let's see. So I noticed a lot of you said something about being here for 5 years. I've been at the coordinating board 5 months. So, yeah. Well, a little over 5 months. About 5 months and a week. When I started in December. And so I look forward to working with all of you. My own background is mainly in community colleges. I spent about 20 years at Austin Community College as a part-timer, a full-timer, a department chair, and a dean. And then I went to Midland College as a vice president for academic affairs. Spent about 8 years there and came to the coordinating board in December. And when I interviewed for this position, the commissioner and the deputy commissioner asked me about what I knew. And I told them I really didn't know a whole lot about much of anything. I'd been an administrator for like 15 or 16 years and pretty much forgotten everything I ever learned in the first place during that tenure. But you know how it goes. And but I did tell them that probably the weakest thing would be graduate education, because I certainly went to graduate school. I got my bachelor's degree at UT Dallas a long time ago. And let's see, we don't have anybody here from Arlington, do I? Got a master's degree at UT Arlington and then got a PhD at UT Austin. So I've been in the UT system for a long time and been in a couple of graduate schools and so forth. But I'm learning as I go along. One of the things that has or is beginning to evolve, I guess, at the coordinating board. As many of you know, that the coordinating board went through sunset legislation last year, and Senate Bill, House Bill, Senate Bill 215, which was the sunset legislation. And by the way, my background is political science, so I used to teach about sunset legislation, the Sunset Advisory Committee, and how all that stuff works and what it's supposed to do and that kind of thing. And but one of the things that did happen with the sunset legislation is that the coordinating board's ability to close programs was curtailed a lot. Some of that was given back with a lot of compliance reporting that will be kind of rolling out, I suspect, over the next couple of years or so as the internal auditors become more and more familiar with that kind of stuff. But what it has done is it has produced the notion that we need to be much more careful, I guess, about approval on the front end. Okay, so sometimes what you take away with one hand gets given back with the other hand, and so forth and so on. And so, as long as you can close programs, it's easy to approve whatever up front, and you can always close it later if it didn't work out that well. And that happens a lot at the college and university level, where things are tried and they don't work out well, so you close them. But one of the things that's been under a lot of discussion with myself and the deputy commissioner and the commissioner as well, and actually have another meeting with him about this on Friday, is about approval of particularly graduate programs and particularly doctoral programs. And so one of the things that you can kind of expect is that there will be much more scrutiny of graduate programs on the front end than there has been in the past. And I think that this group can provide me and the staff and the commissioner with a lot of good input and advice on what are the important things to look at, how we go about looking at those programs in a constructive way. One of the things that the coordinating board is also trying to reinvent itself a little bit it has been put to me that the idea is to be less regulatory, more collaborative, or more coordinating in that sense. And so I do hope that there'll be a lot of collaboration, a lot of input, a lot of feedback on both what we do. And I think this kind of advisory committees really provide us with some really great advice and great help on how we need to be going about doing our job. And so I look forward to working with each and every one of you, and I look forward to your good counsel and advice going forward. So thanks you for being here. You know, one of the things I have to get used to is the whole different rhythm. For example, at Midland College this week starts, last week they had commencement, and so this week starts 4-day work weeks for the rest of the summer. And now you had to start at 7 o'clock on Monday through Thursday. And so on Monday morning, I always hated the idea of a 4-day work week because I had to start at 7. But on Friday morning, I thought it was the best idea in the world. And I'm going to miss those. So that's a part of that rhythm I'm going to have to get used to, 4-day work weeks. But one of the other things I've discovered is that, and this is something that we have to learn how to work with in harmony, is that it's just actually I was thinking about this the other day because I'm coming up on my 6-month probationary period. Well, I guess it'll end one way or the other. And I'm not sure how yet, but I guess it'll end one way or the other. And so I was thinking about what are the two things that's been the hardest to get used to, and one of them is the rhythm of things. The academic calendar year revolves around, when is Christmas break, when is spring break, what are the first week of classes, what is the final exam period, when grades due, when is summer, all those, that kind of things. And the coordinating board's calendar revolves around when is the coordinating board meeting. And those two calendars don't always necessarily match up. And so that's one of the things I've had to get used to is thinking about life. For 25 years I thought about life in terms of when is Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring break, and summer. And now I have to think about when is the next coordinating board meeting. So somehow that doesn't seem like necessarily a step up, but as you can imagine. But anyway, it's interesting. And so, part of what we have to try to figure out together is how to make some of those calendars mesh too, in terms of getting our work done and getting your work done. So, but again, I really do appreciate everyone here, and I really do look forward to working with you, and I really do look forward to the wisdom that you have to offer me. So, thanks again. There is somebody here from the University of Texas.
Yes.
Good morning.
Does anybody have questions?
I'll be glad to try to answer anything. Sure.
Thank you. I would just like to, again, you're learning your position. As you may already be aware, there was a proliferation of doctoral programs created in the state of Texas in the 90s and into the last decade. I sense that over the last 6-7 years, however, the scrutiny on new doctoral programs has increased. It sounds like you're talking about possibly additional scrutiny on new doctoral programs. I hope that's not what you're saying. My concern is that while the bottom-up development of graduate programs is really important because institutionally we have a better idea of where we need to go than maybe the oversight does. But at the same time, it seems like Texas really doesn't have a plan for what is the mapping of doctoral education for the state of Texas. I think the GEAC was formed partly to bring this about, but I don't think we're there. And I think that it's really important that we move. The strategy of graduate education in Texas is not at the point where we are creating a competitive graduate environment. California and the East Coast still dominate, and particularly they dominate in terms of memberships in the arts and sciences, letters. I don't know if you saw the list recently. Those new appointees to the arts and sciences, members of the arts and sciences academy, one from Texas out of 203. And we've been seeing this year after year that we're not drawing in that kind of caliber of faculty, which of course you need if you're going to develop your research at the graduate level and if you're going to achieve dominance in the nation in terms of graduate studies. We're not making any kind of progress by the current process. So what I'd like to suggest to you is maybe let's look at how we're going about doing this and maybe come up with a better strategy or a better plan for creating what is the package of doctoral programs, what is the package of master's programs we should in the state of Texas.
Well, just to comment on the very beginning of your comments, I am suggesting that there will be more scrutiny, but only in the sense of in that approval process itself, and I think part of that should probably be put in that context of some kind of strategic plan for graduate programs overall. I think the commissioner's major concern is that there's a lot of state resources devoted to graduate programs, and so do we need the ones that we have? Do we need new ones? But I think it also goes further to what you're alluding to in the rest of your comments, and that is what exactly do we need, and where do we need them, and what kind? And I find it's somewhat interesting that Texas has several systems, and the coordinating board's responsibility is, since it was formed in the 1960s, is to somehow try to coordinate those separate systems, which is not always easy, and because every several of them are represented here, and so you all know that you all have your own ideas to some extent about what is best for your system, but hopefully the coordinating board, and with the help of this committee, and I think you raised a good point about trying to develop some overall strategy for it, that this committee could help form that kind of strategy that would actually take input from all of the systems and develop something more on a statewide basis. Thank you. Yes, sir, and then I'll come back.
Okay, I just wanted to make a point on an appeal. From the university's perspective, a lot of things are happening at the boundaries of disciplines, and that is one of the hardest things to evaluate in a traditional format. And institutions are working hard to integrate across boundaries. Somehow or another, it's very difficult to then evaluate a program's development and approval at a stage when it is still formative. And I'm hoping that and I think this is where Texas could succeed in ways in which other institutions, in fact, and other systems have not been successful, provided we still have the flexibility in setting forth new ideas that are at the boundaries of disciplines. I just hope that we don't go into closing the shutters down and going vertical. That's the wrong way to go at this time. The students are the things that are looking across boundaries. They want to be able to talk kilocalories and electron volts at the same time. And they want to be able to do that in ways in which we can sort of develop programs that encourage that, because those are the marketable entities that can go forth and actually sort of make a difference in the next generation. That's my appeal. As you look at this, don't look vertical. Include the possibility of working across these boundaries. It's very important to an institution like UT Dallas, for example. Okay, a lot of the stuff we do is at the boundaries of disciplines, and sometimes that presents evaluation problems because it doesn't fit into the norm. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, just in a little bit of response to that, one of the things that we've started trying to do is kind of separate the notion of I don't know, new from traditional programs, and try to look at them a little differently, and particularly if they're, it's like the first in the state, first in the nations, that kind of thing, and try to look at those a little bit differently than we would another program for which there's already 20, so to speak, because I think you raised a good point about that. And I know that, and having gotten my bachelor's at UT Dallas many, many years ago, it was one of the first to have truly interdisciplinary programs. And I actually thought about going to graduate school. You didn't have what I wanted, so.
That's always
Which
the
is
way.
fine. So. And then he's next, and then I'll.
I guess I just want to make a comment about like the closure of programs, that I'm feeling like right now the systems have taken actually a more active role in terms of looking, I mean, what the coordinating boards have done in the past. Like none of the programs that we as Kingsville were being phased out, we actually asked the system to redo again because we knew, I mean, and the system is being maybe more, looking very carefully about what to return back, or so the same rules are being applied, but they're applied closer to where the institutions are, which again is probably the right thing to do, because the system, every system understands more of the constraints within that system and what can be done. So I'm just not feeling like the scrutiny was completely lost, or so actually it is there at the system level and maybe at the institutional level as well, because we don't want to create a program that we feel is going to be low producing in 5 years and then we have the issues with it.
Yeah, and I was only talking about the coordinating board, not the institutions when I made that comment. But of course you're right. I mean, we still have low producing program reports, and rather than the coordinating board take action on them, they now go to the board of regents and presidents and chancellors, and then if they stay on there for 3 years, then they go to the legislative budget board as well. And it's been interesting that since I've been here, we've already gotten one request to close a program mainly so that it would not go to the board of regents, and we've seen others as well. And I was asked at one of the board meetings about how many programs we denied, and across the board since I've been here, we've not denied a single program. In fact, we've actually tried to work with institutions to where we think that there are weaknesses in their proposals to try to make those better. But at the same time, at the last coordinating board meeting, I did report on the fact that we had approved, I don't know, 35 programs, and that's at all levels. And institutions had closed 27. So, I mean, so you're right, it goes on all the time. It's not as though there's just programs being created all the time with nothing going away. So it does happen all the time on a regular basis. And yes.
So I understand that we have some responsibility to the public in order to maintain a reasonable expense at our institutions. But there's a lens that's required to look at higher ed programs in Texas that's probably different than any other state. I spent a lot of time at Drexel University, and I had colleagues in Boston, and I had colleagues in Delaware. Well, the drive to Boston is about 5 hours, and the drive down to DC is about 3 hours. And so essentially, I was passing through Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts just to get to Boston. And I was going up I-95. Well, I could do that going to Lubbock, and I could do the same going to Houston. So when we talk about this as a state, having a program in Houston doesn't have a lot of impact on the population in the DFW area, and certainly not up at the upper corner. And I know you're aware of this, but you have to think about this when you talk about programs in Texas.
Well, I spent 8 years in West Texas, so
Welcome to
yeah. When I was a graduate student at UT Arlington, I had a professor who this tells you how long ago this was. He brought students from Romania, which is then behind the Iron Curtain.
Yep.
And he had this little exchange program. He'd take Americans to Romania for half the summer, bring these Romanian students back. And one of the things he did, he would rent a van. He usually brought about 6 to 12 students back, and he would rent one of these 12-passenger vans, and he would drive them from Arlington to El Paso.
Yep.
And they had a hard time believing that they were still in the same country, you know, much less in the same state, because, you know, 600 miles across Europe would be kind of similar to what you were doing in the Northeast. Yeah, I must admit the biggest part about it for them was that there was still a Levi Strauss factory there, and there was still a Tony Lama boot factory there, and there was still I think it was Stetson or Resistol. I guess it was Resistol still had a hat factory there, and so they got jeans, boots, belts, and hats, all to take back to Romania with them. I guess that was the biggest part, but the distance is something that you point out. And, you know, frankly, I think one of the things that kind of undid the coordinating board on the low producing report is that there was some reluctance to look at those kind of criteria in determining whether low producing programs should be allowed to remain open. And geography is certainly one of those considerations. And in fact, we kind of started looking at, instead of, it used to be a 50-mile radius, and now we started looking at driving time rather than mileage, because, you know, in West Texas, I can cover 50 miles in no time at all. In the Metroplex, I can, you know, cover 50 miles in a half a day, depending on traffic. Right? So yeah, those kind of considerations are certainly important.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to what Dr. Mackey and Dr. Perrick said in terms of mapping the needs and having a strategic plan. And one of the lenses that everybody agrees, I think, that we need to use to look at it is geographical isolation and different sectors. But I think we need to add one more layer in terms of looking at dimensions that we need to use to map these programs, and that is the program type itself. If we have practitioner-based doctorates, I think we need to look at the regional needs. And so we have to have separate criteria for looking at practitioner-based programs and as opposed to the pure research-based programs. I think that will help us not only identify the needs, but also answer the questions of addressing the needs in our area, which is part of our core mission.
I agree. And I think there's a lot of nuances, if you will, to trying to figure out what need is, demand. I'm not real sure you can really establish something like student demand, to be honest with you. I think you can just sort of get some feel for it, but I'm not sure you can really figure out what that is. Because I think it's one of those things, it's like opening a restaurant, you know, you really don't know what the demand is until you've got the doors open and see whether anybody comes in or not. And so I'm not sure that you can really do a lot with that. Need, I think, is something that you can work on a little bit. But even that gets pretty tricky. So there are nuances to it, and I think you're absolutely right about making some further distinction between research degrees and practitioner degrees. John?
Yes. My comment balances off Dr. Moulton, and it has to do with low-producing programs, how that's defined and being used. I'm not quite sure whether it's an absolute value, because programs like physical therapy, making sure now students, when you're looking at the STEM fields, having more graduates in a doctoral program can be a huge number, for example, in mathematics or statistics. So I'm just not quite sure how low producing is normed relative to the field.
Two graduates a year in the doctoral program, 3 graduates a year, average over 5 years, in the master's program, 5 graduates a year.
I think there needs to be some data collected on what are some numbers produced by other programs that are well-respected that you would want to perhaps emulate? And at least get a distribution of the numbers of graduates in particular areas, because some, as I mentioned, may be graduating 20 a year, and that's not realistic. Especially if it's research-based versus something else that's clinical.
We do have that data. We do have that data from all the graduates.
I think it's important to incorporate, and I would just ask everybody to consider that.
And Joan, that's something that the group has been dealing with over the last couple of years. Just we've had lots of opportunity to give input, in fact, and I even testified before the board on behalf of this group with our very concerns, just like you're talking about. And I think that was sort of figured in. I mean, I think that was one of the times when we really did make a difference. They chose to table the increases in those numbers. And then the legislation took place that removed the ability of the coordinating board to close programs. So I think we have seen some movement in that, and a lot of it was based around just exactly what you're saying, that there needs to be some individual consideration to both the discipline and the location and the level of the program. And so I think all of that, James, don't you agree? You worked with us. I think we really had the opportunity to make some differences there.
And if you ask research-based programs in STEM fields that are working hard to recruit and bring students up to the level that they need to be, if you ask them to spend a lot of time also justifying their existence because they're low producing, you're taking away from the program. We want to put the faculty energy where it can help the students.
And at this point, that responsibility has now fallen to your system because your Board of Regents from your system. And so that would be dependent upon them. But I know that I've heard Austin talk about some of their very specific programs that don't have many graduates, and you would not expect them to because you're just not going to have that many people. And now the system has the ability to individually evaluate that. And so I think some of what you're looking for, Joan, has moved that direction recently. But certainly, if you have any questions on how the low producing is done, I know that James would be glad to do that because it's done once a year looking at full year figures, and he would be glad to work with you because we want you to understand what's happening there.
Okay, so if I could piggyback on what Lynn said and what Austin said earlier, I'd like to share with everybody, I don't know if everybody's aware that UT Brownsville and UT Manningham are being consolidated into one university, UT-RGP. Over the last 9 months, we have been going through a bottom-up process of trying to plan out this new university, and it included working groups of faculty and staff looking over every single aspect of a university, bringing in outside consultants, reading, referencing, and one of the things that came out of it, Cynthia Brown and I had to sort through this. Cynthia Brown will be back, and then she's here. She's my counterpart at UT. One of the things that came out of it was recommendations for 63 new doctoral programs, over 150 master's programs. So here we have bottom-up faculty seeing a need for that many doctoral programs. We formed a special doctoral committee to sort through the 63 to try to get the number down into a manageable kind of, to identify what would be the priorities, what would be the strength. That process, which took about 1.5 to 2 months, got it down to about 28 or 29 that were viable for the next 10 years, with about 12 of them being needed within the next 5 years. Now, comes to doctoral program development, our faculty visibly seeing where the field's going are saying that there is a huge need and opportunity out here. And the practicalities of the process, though, are that we're not going to probably have more than 5 developed over the next 5 years. If we get 5, we'll feel pretty good. So there's a difference here, and there's a difference for Texas, because I'm sure that the ideas and the plans all over Texas are such that there are places to go. Now, we were forced into this situation where we needed to look out there and got this. The other thing that we took away from this is what Austin was talking about, interdisciplinary. And that is really a major area that we don't know a lot about in terms of implementation. And it's on everybody's mind, and it's got to be part of the strategy for the future. It was just really profound in our exercise that people are searching their way into this. I know at the last meeting, it was even recommended that the GEAC make this part of its activities for the next year. And I think that's really important. I think that is the most important thing in terms of graduate education all over the nation, is that we figure this out this way.
Just to piggyback on this interdisciplinary, I attended the Council of Graduate Schools meeting, it was December, November timeframe, and there was a whole session on the interdisciplinary program. And I think it is really worthwhile looking into this, because one, there's a need. There's a need with all kinds of disciplines now that require someone knowing physics and knowing the medicine at the same time. And the other part of it is that often this can be done on the cheap in many ways, because there already is sufficient number of courses across the universities they can cover and provide a solid curriculum. Now, some universities are very well respected, and it also a speaker from the UC Irvine. So their school now has 70% of all their programs are interdisciplinary, to the degree where, for example, the PhD in biomedical engineering is not part of biomedical engineering department, because no matter how, the department's a reasonable sized department, but biomedical engineering is such a vast field that the school thought that's not good to confine it to the department. So when we're evaluating this and whatever the practices we do, when we evaluate especially the low degree producing programs, these interdisciplinary ones may often not truly require the same level of investment as almost, dynamic physics, but physics, to offer a degree in physics requires a real physics department. To offer many of these programs require, just taking into account, basically taking advantage of the infrastructure that already exists. Yeah, you may need to have a program coordinator, but that's about it. You don't need to have a full-fledged faculty to offer, 40 credit hours of coursework.
Yeah, and we're beginning to see some of that already in a couple of programs that have come forward where they're taking faculty from 2 or more disciplines. And as a result, you're right. The costs are less than one would expect.
It's actually more efficient.
From creating a department, for example. Yeah.
Employ existing resources better.
Right. Yeah.
In this new environment of looking at doctoral programs, to what extent are you taking into consideration things that are happening in particular fields? For example, disciplines that are regulated or that have accrediting bodies that are wanting them to move in the direction of doctoral education as the entry level for particular practice disciplines. And I'm thinking about all those health-related things, doctor of physical therapy, doctor of nursing practice, those kinds of things. How are you taking those position statements or accrediting guidelines into consideration when you're thinking about approving a new program?
Well, it becomes a part of that mix of trying to determine need, and it's particularly true in the health sciences, I think, are more guilty or forward thinking of this, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, we do take that kind of thing into consideration. And of late, you know, when I said more scrutiny, I think the more scrutiny will probably come in the form of more questions of institutions about why you want to do what you want to do. And some of those questions do revolve around where is the field headed itself. And because I do think that there's probably been some, and I think in some sense understandably so, there is some reluctance to look at sort of brand new stuff. And we probably need to be looking at that more, but we also need help in looking at it as well. And so part of what we do need to be paying much more attention to, and that process has been going on for some time, is to look at where things are headed. We just asked a lot of questions about occupational therapy, for example, and about where that accrediting body is headed in terms of the point of entry for practice. Are they going in the direction of a doctoral program, a doctorate being the entry level, or are they still going to maintain a master's degree as being entry level? They tell us that they're still on a master's degree. So, but those kind of questions are important, and we do try to ask them.
Any other questions? Well, you knew the doctoral remark would be something that would raise people's interest, because that's been certainly something that we've talked about a lot in this group. But I hope that you will call on the people here as you're trying to make decisions. You've got some really great people here with a lot of experience in working with that who would love to offer input. They're never shy about that.
I've talked for a long time, and I know that sometimes it's better to make a statement and get reaction than it is to ask questions. So, I got a lot of input. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, and we thought it would be good for everyone to get to know you and for you to know these people so you can call upon them. We would love for you to do that.
And we will. And if you don't mind, I'll stay and listen to
Sure.
a little more of your stuff.
Okay. Well, because Dr. Peebles was here, I went ahead and had his part, so we need to go back and pick up our minutes. And all of you received the minutes in the emails that were sent out. And so if you'll remember, last time we spent a long time talking about sort of the outcomes of the Texas legislative session, just to remind you. And then we spent a good bit of time working in groups on the 18 doctoral characteristics. And I think that is something that we will carry forward as an issue that needs to be considered by this group. I think Alan's very interested in that. Probably the key question, although we talked about many things last time, the key question is whether or not our clinical programs need to be considered in the 18 doctoral characteristics. And I think we've never really had a specific guideline that was clear to everyone. And so some schools have done it and some have not. And so I think that's a question that really does need to be settled. And I think that hopefully, especially during this next year, we can come to an agreement on that. But also you gave a great deal of input on the definitions for the 18 doctoral characteristics. And all of those are noted in the minutes and need to be taken forward. And then you can look at the other things. We talked about faculty productivity, and we talked about consideration of new doctoral programs, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today and some things that came out of our discussion there. Did anybody see anything in the minutes that needed, well, let me get a motion first. Okay, Charles, do I have a second? Bonnie, I think, had a second. I had a couple of seconds there. Okay, is there anything that did not come across as you think we discussed it, Charles?
I just wondered about the possible topics for future meetings. What was the assessment? I guess there was an assessment made.
Okay, so some of those are on today's agenda, and some of them will be on there in the future. Specifically, we're going to talk a little bit later today about distance education, because I think that is something that seems to be commonly of interest to all of us. And one of the ideas I think last time that came out was possibly having a joint meeting with the LTAC, the Learning Technologies Advisory Committee, so that we could talk about some of the issues that we do have, specifically issues related to student services and those kinds of things that really are important because of the distance aspect of a lot of these programs. And so I think we'll see these on the agenda. We see some today and in the future. And let me tell you that also today, number 12 on our agenda is going to be us talking about issues that are of interest to all of us. And I've been writing down already a couple as we've gone along, but I hope that you will be making notes of things that come to mind that you think this group could have an impact on. Because we want this to be valuable to you, and we want it to be advisory to the coordinating board staff and to the coordinating board. And so we need you to help us to determine the best topics so that we can carry out that role.
Jennifer,
Yes.
there is only one word that I think it says here, refereed publications, it's online, and it should be refereed projects, it should be refereed publications.
Okay, tell me where you see
So
that.
the third, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph on
Under faculty
five.
productivity?
Yeah. The sentence before last, the last word.
Let's see. So you want to change projects to publications?
Yes.
Okay. And since he's the person who said that, he's the person who would know. Thank you. Thank you for reading that carefully. Anybody else have anything that you think needs to be reviewed?
It's a minor editorial.
Okay, Joanne, where's that?
Under Roman numeral 4, the second paragraph, the first statement. It starts with you,
Okay.
Jennifer Martin. It says, and assign them a 2 questions.
It's supposed to be 2 questions. You're exactly right. We'll grab that. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
And just an observation, as someone who was not here, I really appreciate the detail of the minutes.
That is Alan's doing.
Thank you,
He
Alan.
is a great summarizer of a lot of discussion, and so I really appreciate that skill to be able to summarize that.
Well, I appreciate your help because I'm doing the meeting and trying to pay attention while mindlessly typing. And so some things will get missed, so I do appreciate the attention. And we're recording here with this recording device today because we're not in the regular boardroom with our microphones. So particularly those of you over there, bellow so we can pick up our recording.
Shout it out.
Hopefully
Shout it
I'll pick up some things. So thanks for your cooperation with this.
Okay, that's great. Anything else? Okay, all in favor of approval of the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Good, thank you. And we will consider those minutes approved with the 2 amendments that we made. Thank you so much.
I'll commend those minutes to your records as well because at our last meeting, Dr. Goman gave a really fine presentation about what the changes were in the Sunset Bill. And many of them are really far-reaching for what the coordinating board does in its relationship to graduate programs. So there's some valuable information there. I'm sure most of it is now filtered into the universities, and everybody's much more aware of it now. By the time we had the last meeting, a lot of this was really news to many GEAC members that this had gone on in the legislation. So there's some good information, I think, in the notes from James's presentation. We had also forwarded James's presentation, the PowerPoint slides that he used, to GEAC members after that last meeting. Some of the new members may not have that and may want it, so if you're interested, if James is willing, let me know and we can forward you the full text of what James said that day that's summarized here in the minutes about the full impact of Senate Bill 250.
Okay. Good deal. Thank you, Alan. Okay, this morning, James is going to try to help us kind of understand some of the procedures and staffing related to graduate education. One of the things I think that many of us have experienced over time is that the people with whom we work changes at the coordinating board. And sometimes we don't really know who is it that we should be calling right now. So I tell James I really thought it would be great to have an overview so that we know who the best contacts are. And I'm always appreciative that our staff members here at the coordinating board answer their phones and we're able to call them and talk to them. But I don't want to waste their time, and so hopefully this will help direct all of us and let us know the ways we should try to interact with staff members.
Right. I want to give you an overview because some things have changed, some things do legislation, but also just because we've had a lot of staff turnover. So we've got a whole bunch of new staff members working on division, new assistant commissioner, a bunch of new people at the program director level. Most of us in the middle are the same. So just to remind you, I handle a lot of the baseline issues related to graduate education. So I also keep track of all the new proposals that are coming in, masters and doctoral. So especially if you just need sort of a quick general answer or you want to know where something is, something simple like that, yeah, feel free to call me or email me. Stacy Silverman, my direct boss, the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Universities, she also keeps track of a lot of this. So if I'm not around, you can always give Stacy a call or an email as well. And the same I know is also true for Rex. I know he's also happy to answer your questions. I also wanted to introduce you to some of the new stuff. So this is actually our internal page. So starting here from the main page, and I apologize, this is an old computer, so I'll try to keep you entertained. It's slowly trying to crank around and get us to the page. Probably the most critical change that's happened, and one of the things that's made us look very closely at our timeline, and our procedures, and our scheduling, came out of that Senate Bill 215 that I spoke about last time. And that is that now we only have 1 year, 1 calendar year, to consider and act upon each and every proposal that we receive. Now, most of the time, for your typical bachelor's and master's programs that are non-engineering and do not cost over $2 million, you don't have to take those to the board. We do not have to take those to the board. And so those can be handled a lot more expeditiously, and a 1 year deadline is really not an issue. But for those doctoral programs, those master's level engineering programs, or for any of master's or doctoral that's going to cost more than $2 million, all of those have to be taken to the board for consideration. And as you well know, based on your own timelines and cycles for your internal process to your institution, to take things to your own board of regents at the system level, you know that you can't just have things ready on the day of that board meeting. Oh, if only, right? Or even a day before, or even a week before, or even a month before. No, we have to have things ready to go. If you backtrack from the date of the board meeting, well, there's a committee meeting about a month before that. So there you go, there's a month before the board meeting. To get things on the committee agenda, you have to have things all written up and approved within the internal agency leadership 7 weeks before that committee meeting. So now it's 1 month plus another 7 weeks. That's almost 3 months. Okay? So that effectively means that no, we do not have a year to get this approved. We have 9 months to do our work, then put it before the board and hopefully get it approved. And that's 9 months if you submitted the proposal, say, right after the board meeting. If you submitted it right before, that cuts off that board meeting. Now we've got to schedule it for the board meeting that would happen before that. Oh, now we have about 5 months to do our work. And so I tell you all this, one, I want you to be aware of our scheduling and just how tight it's got. Because we're going to need your help and understanding, and we have needed your help and understanding this past year in negotiating the workload and getting things done on time. So what you'll find sometimes is that we ask you for a lot of information, you don't hear from us. And what happens is we're writing all that up and getting internal approvals. So then when we do come back to you, it's, okay, please give us a site visit date in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And give us the names of the consultants in the next 2 or 3 days so we can contact them and try to get things set up. So you'll notice that some deadlines now come upon us very quickly. And as soon as we get the authorization to move on, say, the site visit, we have to act very quickly, get the dates set up, get our consultants set up, free up our schedule, and we can out there and see you guys and all like that. And you'll also find that once we get that, we can come back to you very quickly. We'll push the consultants hard and say, okay, give us your report in a week. So within a week, we're going to send you that report. And say, okay, please. I want this to go to this board meeting date, and we continue. Get back to us in a week, or maybe 10 days. So you'll just notice that all of these deadlines are going to tighten up noticeably. And we're all going to need to pull together to get everything happening in the right schedule, get everything going. And that way, if all goes well, we'll get it to the right board meeting, and then you would get the approval that you want so that then you can start the semester you want to start that program. So here on our main page, probably the easiest way to get to a lot of our resources, and I want to talk about several, is pull up our division page. I want to talk to you about, here's how to find the degree program tracking. So if you can't get a hold of us, or you just want to look on the web, because all you want to know is, hey, where's my new doctoral proposal in X? Whatever, some type of engineering program. And we're trying to find that. So let's start with that. Proposal tracking system. The new ones, even though we don't actually make you post it with us 30 days now, you post these things yourselves. This is where you can find very new proposals. These are all the ones that come in recently. We've got engineering, MIT, evolution biology. We've got a bunch of new stuff coming in recently. DNP from Corpus Christi. And you can see the staff person that it's assigned to. You see its status. So let's say that you're UNT and you want to find out about this Master of Arts degree in International Studies. Click on the woman's name because she's the one working it. Turn through. But the idea is you can click on that person and contact information. Of course, the computer's going to embarrass me. So instead, I get an opportunity to show you what else is going on. Proposal, the very new ones. Pending proposals, these are the ones you're interested in. These are the ones that action has not yet been taken. Here's a long list of them. And you say, well, I don't want to search through this long list, James. This is tedious. Look at this. Here, finally, it pulls up Melinda's email address. You can email Melinda and say, hey, Melinda, what are you doing? You're being very slow. I want to know where this program is. Why haven't you taken action? Where is it? I'm sure you will. And we'll write her a nice email, and you'll ask her, hey, where is this? I don't know what's going on. And she'll send you back a nice little update saying, oh, well, I'm just about to do this, or I just done that. So we've got this long list here, but you may not want to search through the long list. So that's why the bottom option is to search for a particular proposal. And that's where you can pull up your institution, which we will imagine is, oh, look, it's Texas A&M, and you want to see, where's that new thing? Was it 3 months ago, 5 months ago? It might have been like 7 months ago. So we'll pull up everything that A&M submitted in the past year. And once again, you can see when it came in, right? You can see what it is, you can see who it's assigned to, and what the action is, if any. Like you might say, oh, actually has been taken on this. I just haven't received it yet. So then you know the staff person has finished their work, and it's worked its way up the approval chain, but the result has not actually been sent to you, so you know it's probably coming in just a minute. Sometimes that's really nice. But anyway, that's how you can track down those specific things, especially when that's all you want to know. Hey, the faculty member's bugging you. Hey, where is this proposal? I sent it in 2 years ago. Well, you have to understand that it has to work through your institution, it has to work through your system, then it finally comes to us. So there's a lot of steps. The next thing I want to show you is right here at the top, and that's the staff directory. which is just handy if you don't have everyone's card, email, or phone number handy. There's Rex's information right here. There's Stacy's information. And then below here are my colleague, Ronald. He handles a lot of the undergraduate stuff, but if I'm ever not around, he's also the person to talk about. And then here we have we have all of our staff. So I just want to run through and tell you, here are the people that will work on your master's development course. Jessica is one of our new people. We just hired her within this past academic year. She comes to us from California, where she worked with a lot of the private institutions. She worked for one of the private universities out there in California, and did a lot of new program review and approval, and also existing program review. So she's got a lot of experience with both graduate and undergraduate programs, and you see her areas of education. So we do tend to assign a lot of the education stuff, but not all of it, because none of us can afford to be specialists. We all have to be journalists. Melinda Valdez-Ellis, she's also in education. She comes to us out of the Deputy Commissioner's office. She worked on the Texas Student Project and a number of other kind of large-scale projects for the agency. Now she's one of our program directors, and she's about to do her first site visit at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I'll be joining her for that next week. I just want to point out that because we do have so many new staff people, you'll notice that in our site visits, when we come see you guys, there may be a small snobs. Two of us rather than just one, and that's because we're training all these new people. And so what we do is the first time I take someone out, or Alan might take someone out, and we model for them how it's done. And the second time, we come along with them and we let them run the show. They're just there as a resource. So that's why you'll see more of us in the site visits we're doing this year as we go. Alan, of course, is one of our most serious, our most experienced program directors. We give him some of the tough stuff. New and emerging fields. Right, we recently had one in forensic science, and that was a little bit tricky because there's not really any doctoral programs in forensic science as that is titled. And so he's been handling that, and he's got a lot of experience in related stuff like translational science. Not brand new. There were a couple of others in the state, but still a new and emerging field, so we like to get that and him keeping on his toes. Doug Jansen, his background is in history, and he comes to us after working in a variety of institutions. Like myself, he worked at St. Jude in California, he worked at the University of Houston, he worked at Austin Community College and a few other places. We're getting him trained up. For some reason, even though he's in history, he's ended up with a lot of the engineering proposals. So we've been building up his expertise in engineering because he's got a lot of engineering proposals. And because it's interdisciplinary, it's a field where things are really starting to cross over, we wanted to give him a variety of experience in that field. And so he's got a bunch of proposals he's working on, and you'll see him coming out for another site visit real soon as well. Scrolling down, we have so many of these that we can't actually work them all within our own little department, and we call upon people who work on the other side of the house, who are technical colleges side of the house as well. So here we have Andrew Lofters. He's come to us out of the K-12 system. He used to be an assistant principal here in the Austin area. He's had a lot of experience in education. And so he works with a variety of graduate programs. We just went down to Clear Lake not too long ago, and he did his second site visit. So his experience is getting built up. Now he's ready to go out and do site visits on his own.
James, can I ask you a quick question about Andrew Lofters? Mm-hmm. In a recent communication, a piece of correspondence that referenced an inventory of self-funded degree programs that Andrew Lofters maintains. Is he somehow involved or a point person? Should we know about him as it relates to our administration of self-funded degree programs? Should he be on our radar for that reason?
Yes, he should. And here's the thing. We've gotten all this new staff, and so we've shuffled around some responsibilities, and now we're probably going to do that again. Now we're close to fully staffed. Whereas this time last year, we were down like 5 or 6 people. It was pretty serious. We've had Andrew doing a lot of distance and stuff. He still is right now. We're starting to transition some of that away from him. So that's why he's been involved in the self-funded. We tend to throw the self-funded into a category that's sort of aligned with distance education, which is kind of accurate, but also kind of not, right?
We do too.
Frequently, but not always, your executive type self-funded programs often take place at other sites. You're teaching in another city or on an extension campus of some kind, a teaching location. But not always. Some of them are on their own campuses. So we kind of have that aligned with distance ed, and Andrew's been doing distance ed. He's been building up a lot of inventories of distance ed programs and things like that. So yes, Andrew is a good person to know. But that first person I mentioned earlier, Jessica Acton, we're going to take some of Andrew's distance ed responsibilities and try to move them over to Jessica, just because honestly it's too much for one person. Because we also have Andrew doing a lot of the education-related stuff. All of your applications for new programs that involve teaching certificates, Andrew reviews those, whether at the graduate or the undergraduate level. So if you have a teaching certificate or related type question, Andrew's the person to come see.
James, so study abroad right now is with Andrew. Is that going to Jessica then also? I'm staying with him.
We haven't worked out the actual division of duties yet.
Okay.
So I hope to have a more clear picture for you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're still sorting through some of that.
I understand.
James, before you move on, Jose Rios is going to be our new best friend for GEAC. He's the one helping us work on the graduate version of the Applied Texas,
Yes.
which I'll say more about later today.
Yes, and he's going to come talk to us about it. Isn't Jose going to come talk to us? Yeah. He'll come talk to us. You get to see Jose, put a face with him. Chris has been with the agency a long time, and Chris has a lot of experience with the health-related institutions and their programs, but also with the universities and your allied health or other health-related programs at the university. She's one of our most knowledgeable people when it comes to keeping straight the DNP, and all the different specialties that are involved in the DNP. Are you doing an MSN to DNP or a BSN to DNP? I don't know. It makes me pull my hair out, but then I run to Chris and she tells me what's actually going on. So if you have submitted one of those type programs that I just mentioned, like something like DNP, MSN, BSN, any of that stuff, probably with Chris, because I'm probably BSN. She's a good person to keep track of when you have issues related to allied health graduate. Rebecca is one of our newer staff. She's been on board a little bit over a year now, and she has done one site visit. I think we're about to get her scheduled for her second. I think that should be ready to do things on her own. And she came to us out of Texas A&M Commerce a while back. She used to run the Texas Public Corresponding System in the state. So she has a lot of knowledge of issues actually related to undergraduate education, but she's also very, very sharp. And we couldn't afford not to train them to do doctoral applications, so we like them. So we like to see them do that too. That covers all of our people.
So James, as you said, you're reorganizing. Well, the people that are down in the community college, will they still be doing the doctoral things when
Yes.
you reorganize?
Yes, even after we organize, the people that we train to do doctoral applications will almost certainly keep at least doing a few doctoral applications. As I mentioned before, that's our biggest staffing challenge, and because they're, in terms of program proposals, they're a project. I mean, you have almost a year that you have to schedule out all these events. So we like to spread that work out as much as we can, so that, literally, given all the proposals we've had in the past year, I think in the past calendar year, we probably received 15, I would guess, documents. It's something on that order. It's far too much for even two people to do it by themselves. So we farm that out as much as we can. Give a wider array of perspectives, get more people experience with it. The other thing I wanted to mention here is you can find a lot of the other links that you might want to look at related to graduate education. So when you get a new doctoral program approved, there's always the contingency attached, that you're going to give us 5 annual reports on the progress of that new program. This is where you access that stuff. Annual progress report for the adopted programs. Here's where you can check the due dates. Here's the instructions for filling this out. So you've got department members, faculty members that are just lost in the gift. If the old department chair left and new ones come in and they have no idea what to do, at least you can give the same instructions about what the different categories mean. And this is where you go through the system. Document submission portal. This is where you give us stuff. Anything that you might want to give us related to programs, new programs, existing programs, this is where you can send things to us. This is where you send in the new master's proposals, and doctorate proposals, and certificate proposals. But also, if you needed to say, change the credit hours in one of your master's programs, you have your provost write up a letter explaining what you need to change, the name of the program, the level of the program, how many hours you need to go up or down, the rationale for that, and then you submit it to the board. If you needed to change something related to one of your graduate program reviews, you can also send it in through this way. Although I'm also happy to have you contact me directly and let me do that. That's perfectly fine.
Jake, one more question.
Most of what I wanted to cover on graduate education, did you have a question?
A very quick question.
Yes.
Every time I submit something through the portal, I feel obligated to email you and say, I've just sent you something through the portal. Do you get an email, or is that redundant?
Yeah,
okay.
It is redundant in the absolute sense, but because I get so many things coming my way, it is honestly not at all unwanted for you to send me a quick note and say, hey, I sent you something, particularly if it's, I'll put it, something notable, right? Like, I asked for a few changes to my graduate programs. 30 of them, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's nice that I've been doing, I'm going to block out some time to make 30 changes to your graduate program review schedule. I do appreciate that. So yeah, anytime you want to contact me, let me know if there's something, either something that you particularly want me to pay attention to, something that would be time sensitive, or something that's kind of an unusually large block or chunk of work. I always appreciate it. Any other questions you want to ask about our resources and how to find things? So I've shown you how to find, here's where the proposals you sent in, here's how to find, track them down, see who's working on them, here's how to find their information, here's how to submit the new stuff, and also, another thing I didn't mention actually, graduate program review, we've got a little bit of that as well. Sign in with your username. Some of you are the point of contact for graduate program review because you're a graduate dean or you're serving that function, whatever your title may be. Others of you have delegated that to others. Keep in mind that, I just want to reiterate, the way the system's set up, in order to keep things straight, one person only can be the point of contact. So if you delegated that to someone else, you've got to work through them. You can't log in yourself. Otherwise, there's so many. There's over 40 of you institutions, right? 38 universities, 10 affiliated institutions. So I've already got 58 people that I have to keep in touch with about 58 schedules. If there were 2 of you at each institution, that would be the straw that broke my camel's back and it would be unmanageable. So for that reason, there you go. That's graduate program review, and I think that's the only other thing that I'm going to cover. So, are there any questions?
This is your chance if you had a burning question about how something is now working.
Just to give you, I thought I would mention procedures as well. When you send something in, it's sent in through the portal. I have a program inventory person that handles the inventory and all new proposals. First thing she does is log it in. We're going to have a login date because of that one-year deadline. Now remember that legislation also said that we have 5 working days to evaluate every proposal you send us and decide if it's actually completed. So that's another little wrinkle that you may notice. You may notice occasionally that you sent in a proposal and there it is, it's coming right back to you. If that happens, it's because the first thing that we do after we log that proposal in is I assign it to one of my program directors. And if they're all busy, I'll do it myself. And I'll look over your proposal, and we'll look over your proposal. We'll make sure that every field is adequately answered. at least in a broad sense. It's not that we won't follow up with you for details, but if you completely omitted a section, or if you answered it in a way that does not really answer what we were looking for, like in the budget, you only gave us your total revenues and your total costs. You didn't give us anything other than that. We would come back to you and say, no, we need to know how much you spend on personnel, how much on equipment, how much on whatever. Right? That would come back to you, and we will give you 10 working days to respond to us. If you do not respond to us in 10 working days with the information we asked for, we will send the proposal back to you. It's kicked out. That's what we call it, kicking it out. Kick it out and go back to you. Which, we don't want to be jerks, we're not trying to be mean, but because we have that 1-year deadline, we have to have complete proposals sent to us. We just literally do not have enough time to have a whole bunch of back and forth about that. So we have to make sure the proposals are complete. We'll send it back to you, get 10 days to come to us. Now, if you don't, there's absolutely no penalty attached. I want to make that clear. No penalty attached to you fixing it and taking your time. So to see that it's complete, and you have to go back to your faculty, they have to answer a bunch of stuff, and then you have to rip it back up through your own system. That's fine. That takes you 3 or 4 months. That's fine. You can resubmit it as soon as you're ready. But notice, you're resubmitting. Now that's going to start a clock working. I just wanted to give you the broad overview. After it's assigned, we assign it to a program director. They start reviewing it in detail. They come up with an evaluation. That evaluation works its way up through me, through Stacy, through Rex. Now it leaves our division, it goes down to the commissioner's office. The deputy commissioner and the commissioner, David Gardner and Dr. Paredes, they review it. If the commissioner's happy with it, he will say yes, and give it a thumbs up, and that's when we either schedule a desk review or site visit. And then we coordinate with you and we work on that. We find one or 3 consultants, we schedule a site visit if it's a site visit, and we come out and we do all that great logistical work that we do to do the review with the consultants. Now, we get the consultants to issue the written report. We send the written report to you. You respond to that. Now we take your response, the consultant's report, and we bundle it up with a little memo and we send it to the commissioner. Now the commissioner gives his approval to put it on the board agenda. Now it's on the board agenda, all's going well. Our staff will write this up for the committee and the board meeting, and then we will contact you. And we'll say, hey, this is headed for the cause meeting in June and the board meeting in July. Please have people ready to come and speak. That's important because sometimes board members have detailed questions. Sometimes they don't, and so that's why it's always a little bit of a roll of the dice. You might see people up here and they might not get asked a single question. Or they might get grilled for half an hour. Never tell. Never tell, so it's always best to be ready. Have your notes. We like to recommend that you have someone at kind of at your level, a graduate dean or assistant provost or something like that, and then have someone at the very grassroots program level, like a faculty person teaching or the department chair, so they can answer questions about curriculum and graduate students. And then that's it. Once it goes to the committee, then it goes to the board, and then that's the final consideration. That's all the major hurdles that we have to hop through to get this. All right? Yes, sir.
For master's programs that are not engineering or going to cost more than $2 million, how long is the time frame between receiving something from the Board of Regents to actually us receiving acknowledgement? So.
I would have to look at the actual average, I guess. We could give you an average. My sense of it is that generally within about 3 months you'll get something. You'll actually receive it back. Ideally, it would take us only about a month to 2 months to do that. But because we're so time sensitive on these other things, you can understand in your own work. Sometimes your master's program has to go on the back burner. It's, hey, I've got to run and do a site visit down to the University of Houston, and so that's 2 weeks that I'm getting ready, doing it, and doing the stuff after that. I just can't work with the program. So, yeah, anytime that you submitted sort of a typical master's program that has that short statement of assurances, if you haven't gotten that answer back in 2.5, 3 months, please call me or email me, because that means we're backed up. And then I can explain to you why we're backed up and how long it's going to take before we'll actually get around to it. Any other questions about these processes or timelines? Okay, well, Thanks for your attention. I'll turn it over to Dr. Jennifer and we get on with the next one.
Okay. Well, would y'all like to take a coffee break? I think that would be good. Why don't we let you have like a, let's say, no more than 10 minutes, be back here, okay? And there's coffee next door, and let you get coffee or water. Have a little stand-up break.
Oh, good. Coffee.
We'd love to have you. You made it. Good.
Well, they started rolling in
Oh, no.
no, it's all right. I said, I don't know what time this flight is going to take off, so I asked them to put me on the next flight.
Yeah.
Exactly as the runway for like 20 minutes. I don't know why it did that. It was right here when
Well, we're glad you're here.
That is Dallas. Never count on.
Oh, I know. I always fly early. I had a question about whether we'd be through at 3 o'clock. We will be through at 3 o'clock. We will.
Some of us are driving back. That was the reason.
No,
I asked.
There are a lot of people flying who it becomes even more important for.
Okay, well,
We will. Because there's, I don't know what the weather forecast is now, a little earlier, that was kind of iffy for us.
it was iffy, yeah. I
Yeah.
was looking at that.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
Not that I've heard, but I can check.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. We will get ourselves going here. Well, the last time we talked about the possibility of a joint meeting with the Learning Technology Advisory Committee, and we also talked about at one point about a possibility of a meeting with the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee. I know Alan and I have talked, and I don't think that between the two of us we could come up with that many topics that would probably be in common for the undergraduate. But Alan, you might want to address this a little bit, and then we can let the group give their thoughts on these joint possibilities of some joint meetings.
Okay, thank you. Taking notes here on what I'm about to say. Charles Lucchio a few minutes ago asked when we were talking about the minutes what we had discussed in that catch-all bit at the end where we said what are some ideas that you would like to talk about in future minutes. A number of items came up, and most of them are related spontaneously, really, with distance education. It seemed to be on everyone's mind. So as evidence that we really do follow up with your discussion ideas, I thought, well, perhaps we should bring the Learning Technology Advisory Committee in on this. The coordinating board has several advisory committees. GEAC is one of them, but it's not the only one. We have a few. And two of the other ones that are directly related to academic affairs are the Learning Technology Advisory Committee and our partner organization, sister organization really to GEAC, is the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee. And it occurred to me that perhaps the advisory committees could have some things to say to one another about some of the common issues that are shared, and then in turn be able to use their collective voice to also speak back to the coordinating board about some of these joint issues. So since GEAC seemed to have learning technology on its mind, the next time Learning Technology Advisory Committee met, I asked them if they might be interested in having a joint meeting with GEAC. They thought that it was a good idea, and they suggested that perhaps we bring UEAC in on as well. So when the Undergraduate Advisory Committee, UEAC, met last time, I flew the idea by them, and they seemed to be open to the idea. And since then, it's kind of turned into like a little mini conference where there would be some breakout groups, some discussions, some presentations about what learning technology in particular has to share where GEAC and UEAC overlap. And so I wanted to fly the idea by you and see if GEAC would be willing to do this. We've discussed it internally here at the coordinating board, and there are some tricky things to do with quorums, to do with whether or not this is an official meeting of GEAC. There's a couple of ways we could do this. If we were to have it be a joint meeting with LTAC, then they'd have to be scheduled on the same day. Maybe GEAC would meet earlier in the day to do its business, and then we'd have a shared time, and then the other committee would meet later to do their business. There's complications about we need to meet in the boardroom because that's where we can broadcast to the public. This is a rare exception today where we just can't do that. We don't have to do it like that. We could make it an unofficial meeting and have it be more of a conference kind of environment. But the catch is, if we have a quorum, then it's an official meeting, and we have to advertise it in the Texas Register. We have to make it available to the public, which is no big deal. We can do that. But there was a concern for UEAC, because not all of UEAC was really remotely interested in connecting with us with GEAC, because they're in the two-year colleges, and there just really isn't that, the undergraduate directors and many of the folks just couldn't come to Austin for that. And so UEAC decided that it would be in their best interest to make it a non-quorum meeting for UEAC, and to have those interested parties who work with the four-year institutions to come and participate in a joint meeting like this.
What would define a quorum presence from this group? Let me ask it that way. How many people, if we exceeded that number, it would then be official?
That's right.
And so, what is a quorum for this group? So that
I think it's 13.
I do not know.
It's 50% plus one.
Okay. So if 10 of us said we were interested in coming, assuming 13 is the number, then we would, in fact, be able to hold an unofficial meeting. I think that's the right way to do it until we find out what the real common interest is.
Well, and I think that in talking, Alan and I talking, I'm not sure, you tell us, are there some common things that we do need to cover with, let's deal with them one at a time. UEAC is Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee. And so their focus is on both the 2-year and the 4-year, correct? They have representatives from both. So they probably have less issues, I'm thinking, in common with us, unless you have thought of some of those. I think where we seem to have more of the commonalities was dealing with the distance situation and the need for services for distance students. And I think that might be more the value for us. And so if there's not a set of issues that are in common, I personally don't see a need for a meeting. But we could have, the one thing I had asked Alan was, could we have a joint LTAC and GEAC meeting where it is the real meeting for each of those, and we could just have co-chairs to conduct the meeting. Alan, would that be against the rules in any way?
We've discussed just generally the idea of having a joint meeting as a semi-regular thing, if not every year, every other year, where the advisory committees have joint meetings with one of the other committees. For example, LTAC can meet jointly with UEAC one time. We can meet jointly with LTAC. We can meet jointly with UEAC. And it's just a matter of coordinating so that we're all here physically on the same day.
Yeah.
Maybe we have lunch together, have some joint presentations, some joint breakout groups and discussions, and then have our separate business meetings later in the day. So it's a thought for future meetings. But we thought for a trial balloon, we would try this with LTAC first and see how it goes, since LTAC seemed to be really interested in the idea. As Jennifer said, the direction, the momentum here seems to be going to having a joint meeting with LTAC, and they would have a quorum, so it's going to be an advertised public broadcasted meeting anyway. So I don't see why GEAC couldn't go ahead and make it a public formal meeting as well. And those who are interested from UEAC could come as they see fit, since the community college interests don't really overlap quite that effectively.
Right. Oh, certainly we could invite them, but I guess, but it doesn't sound like there's that much interest there. Yeah, as long as they didn't end up with a quorum.
There was some really creative brainstorming of topics that we could talk about, and I would like to get your input as well of the kinds of issues that we could discuss. And I'll fly these by you first just to give you an idea of what a meeting like this would be like before I ask your final opinion about whether or not this would be a good idea. In no particular order, there were things like program approval criteria for new online doctoral programs. Do they need to be different from the approval process and the criteria that we use for face-to-face programs? The strengths and weaknesses of MOOCs, very large classes, for graduate education, the implications of learning technology for the rigor and content of programs. That's a frequently expressed concern. Learning technology and its implications for dissertation advising, because often that's where the real face-to-face power of graduate education comes into play, is in advising dissertations. The implications of learning technology for graduate teaching assistantships. Are there new and different opportunities for graduate assistants to earn money? Learning technology and alternatives to research papers and alternatives to dissertations, alternatives to dissertation publishing, different kinds of capstone projects, interdisciplinary work that might be available. Folks from GEAC, when I asked them for some of their ideas, they mentioned many of these same things. Learning technology and developmental education, particularly, and that can overlap certainly with graduate studies as well, development education for those graduate students who might need extra help getting up to speed on foreign language requirements or mathematics requirements. Learning technology and lab sections, in addition to teaching opportunities for distance education graduate students. What learning technology can offer for building community through cohorts, learning communities, competency-based education, how we can move towards that with the assistance of learning technologies. Graduate education and the facilities of the digital learning objects repository, which many of you may not know about. It's a resource in Texas for places for we just call them learning objects. Sometimes they're lectures, sometimes they're slideshows, sometimes there are audio files, resources, pool of available digital resources. It's probably not used very often in graduate education, but it could be. Implications for student retention, implications for electronic textbooks, simulations, adaptive learning, all kinds of things. So there are plenty of things we could discuss, and I'd be interested in your thoughts to add to that list. But with that in mind, do you think this is a positive direction for GEAC to go in to pursue a joint meeting with LTAC and or UEAC?
For me, I think LTAC would be much more fun for us.
Yeah, I agree.
Even as you list some of those things, I think that the GEAC was involved in, I think some of those are not as important to us as some of the other stuff we need to talk about, such as the dissertation advising and the TAs online and those kinds of things.
Somebody, Ronald.
Yes. I think there are two issues that we are very much interested in. And one of the things we did talk about the academic rigor and the content part, as also the pedagogy, because different faculty members have different teaching styles, and there's a lot of contention among them as to how much intervention there should be. And there is a need for intervention, given that we have to deal with SACs and ACSB and fit requirements. And so when our director of online program goes to faculty and talks about quality issues, there is no clear direction from the state that they're getting board about the quality of programs. There are some things that you can put in there, but we need to have some clarity on that. Another issue that has come up is academic policy, and that's also because of SACs and the issue of proctoring. And this issue was brought to our attention by CSB, and they are looking into it. And I think it's something that we need to look into and have some policy, because academic policy and proctoring have become a challenge.
Charles.
I've had one experience with LTAC reviewing one of our doctoral programs that was on off campus, and I was really impressed with we learned things. The faculty learned things, I learned things from their review. They were very, very good at that review. And I think bringing them to us, it's likely that, as we all said, there's going to be issues that we haven't really thought about that are going to come forward.
You may not know that when there are new online doctoral programs proposed, a subcommittee of LTAC approves those, and they do not go forward to the full board meeting without the approval of LTAC. So they are part of our evaluation process for new doctoral programs. And there hasn't really been much direct feedback back and forth between GEAC and LTAC about what their standards are. They can educate you as to what their criteria are for appropriate online doctoral programs, and you can offer them some feedback whether or not you think that sounds like they're looking for the right thing.
And the other is, I think, just the other process too, those who have existing doctoral programs that are moving online. And, because as there's notifications and information that we have to be sending all the way along as they add courses.
And of course, some programs are mixed. They're part online, part not online. And that's kind of a moving target of what we consider to be an online program, how much online. And to the extent that it's offered out of state, questions of tuition, questions of residency, questions of tuition fees, kicks in as well.
I think just the streamlining, and some of that has happened recently, but even just making sure that I think no longer do we have to do two proposals. We used to have to do two proposals, and aren't they using a common proposal now? Or do they still do it? If you're doing a doctoral program that's a distance program.
Right. No, what we've done is we had two proposals, and they had a lot of redundant information between. So now we're going through and looking at the two forms. Andrew's been helping me with this. And we're identifying all the things that were common, and for LTAC, we're only including the items that are specific to distance learning. So you won't have to repeat all of the kind of general curricular information and things like that in the LTAC proposal. It'll have just the information that LTAC needs to make that consideration.
And I think that's something that's really a move forward, because I know we have a lot of distance programs, so we've been through it a lot of times. And one of the things is sometimes as new members would come on to LTAC, they would, instead of focusing on the learning technology part, they were asking questions about fields that they had no knowledge of, disciplinary fields, and where we had already been through a review from our outside reviewers, but yet they were asking questions like that. And so I think that is going to be helped a whole lot by streamlining. We're not doing two things, and the right people are asking the right kinds of questions, which I think is what we really need there. But I do think that it would be helpful to meet together, because you're right, we've never done that and really understood what they're looking for. And I do think, Charles, that you're on the right track. They have good knowledge of quality matters and all of those things that will assure that we are producing quality distance education programs, and they can really help the faculty sometimes, because sometimes the faculty are great experts in their field, but they have not ventured into this before, and they're not aware of that, and they're not aware of the resources that can help them there.
And there's a greater level of acceptability and trust.
Yes.
When it comes from coordinating. But for example, we had a rubric that was designed using quality matters and weighties and other rubrics, and there is all kind of opposition to it, and I can understand, because of the level of trust people have in these kind of things, but I think we need to have some standard as well.
It does sound like this could be valuable to a lot of us, I think, a lot of us.
I move we have a meeting.
Well, do we have other questions that you think? I think one of the things we want to do is, as we plan a joint meeting, you don't want to just say, okay, we're going to all get together and talk. We really would like to be able to outline the issues so it uses everyone's time well. We don't want it to be just a free-for-all. If we can outline the issues, I think that you are most interested in, and I think I've written down a whole list today from what Alan has taken good notes on. But do you have others that have come about for you that you think we do need to cover?
I just want to repeat what Candy said. The existing doctoral programs that they're looking to take on.
Yeah.
Our learning tech is the only one we have, which makes no sense, but there are others.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk more about how that may occur and how they may be judged or assessed.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we have their wish list for such a meeting?
I read you the highlights of it.
Yeah, okay.
What I'm thinking we could do is set up some sort of poll, some sort of website, some sort of thing where I would ask your input, and LTEC members, UEA members as well. What are the issues among these issues? What would you like to discuss? And then get some consensus, because again, we can't talk about everything. I also don't want us to spend a whole lot of time talking about things that we all already know or that are all already pretty obvious. So I don't want to do that. I wanted to really zero in on the things that relate to what's happening in Texas with our programs, and that we can work with the three advisory committees to really jointly come up with some recommendations and some prepared thoughts about. It also need some help. We need some volunteers. We need some people with expertise and investment in these issues to be willing to lead discussions, to speak to it, to perhaps prepare something to demonstrate to the rest of the group. So that's important as well. So if we did go ahead with a meeting like this, I'd set up some sort of feedback mechanism where I send you a survey or a poll and ask for your ideas and ask for your volunteer time, and get some sense about what the meeting would really be.
And then as you plan the meeting, Alan, if you could have a joint, the two chairs, you and James, like you do for your normal planning, that would be really, really good. Or even the vice chairs too, of the two groups.
Right, the chairs of the committees would be really instrumental in helping.
That would be great.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is there any reason why we should, it seems that everyone is thinking about this issue in the context of doctoral programs, but is there any reason that we should limit it to that? Is this committee involved in the same sort of discussion with master's degree programs?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
I wasn't thinking doctoral, and if I said that, I'm sorry. I was thinking graduate.
Okay,
for sure.
excellent.
Yeah,
I only mentioned the doctoral in terms of LTEC because it's only the new online doctoral programs where LTEC has a role.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Good.
But I think to discuss it, it can involve those quality.
It's universal.
Yeah,
sorts
it
of
is,
issues.
and we want to make sure we have high quality master's programs also.
Right.
Yeah, that's really important. Because, in fact,
Especially
probably more.
in business.
Yes, exactly.
We have what I'm thinking, and I can go back and check on this, is our Center for Lifelong Engineering runs several distance ed programs, and they might be a good person for us to reach out to in terms of coming and being a part of that discussion.
Sure.
In terms of expertise.
Yeah. And I think always when we have a meeting like this, y'all know that these are open meetings. Everybody does know that. And so today we don't have a lot of room for audience, and thankfully we don't have a lot of audience. We have a wonderful audience back there, but with Kevin, Cynthia, and Greg. But these are always open meetings, and we try to make sure we include in this arena anyway. We always include the attendees in our discussion. So. They're free to raise their hands, and I think we would do it that same way there.
There could be some guest speakers as well,
Yes.
people who the coordinating board and elsewhere. I know Van Davis is eager to speak. He's our resident expert in many issues dealing with innovations in distance education. And there could be others as well.
And Van did a great job, and were any of you at the coordinating meeting? Van did a great job this last time on an overview of distance education in the state, and that might be a valuable thing that he could possibly adapt to this group to focus on it. But it was, because a lot of it was undergraduate focus, but I think that it could be very valuable information. I learned a lot, and I had a heavy distance ed school, but I did learn a lot from that presentation. Okay, any topics that come to mind? It's almost time for us to have lunch, and it's here. Okay, I didn't know. Okay. Was somebody else going to say something?
So, is it our consensus to move forward with plans with LTEC to?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think it would be great. Okay, that's a good thing, and I think we've got a good list of possibilities that you might put on your list and then open it, then you would give people the opportunity to suggest others also, right?
Yeah, think about it, sleep on
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
I'll give you a forum for offering me some
Yeah,
ideas.
that's great. I think that's wonderful.
One of the things that I'm really interested in is
Sure.
students.
Oh,
Issues
okay,
with
Candy,
international
that's a,
students and online
yes,
programs.
yes.
We have a real problem.
Yes, international students. Because SEVIS says we've got to keep up with them, and so we've got to make sure we're in continual contact.
And I just love to know how people are doing that.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's a good idea.
And we have interesting issues with maintaining balances of domestic populations
Oh,
in
yes,
online
yes, that is an
programs.
issue. Yes.
And best practices in doing so.
Legal practices.
Yes.
Okay, as other things come to mind, toward the end of the day, we may see just other things that you have in mind. But if you've got them, write them down if they come to mind. We don't want to lose track of them. Okay, so who's going to give us lunch instruction?
Okay, I can handle that. So the lunches are set up in the Commissioner's Conference Room where the coffee and water is set up. The boxes are there. Boxes all have your names, so just grab the box that has your name on it. And you are welcome to either eat here or you can grab some of the chairs in the Commissioner's Conference Room. It might be nice. We might be a little crowded here, so you can take lunch wherever you want. Did you want us to lunch as a group? Or?
No, I'm fine. No. Let's take a lunch break. Let's be back here ready to go. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to continue on with our agenda. And the next item is discussion of documentation and of student and workforce need and applications for new doctoral programs. And I think all of us have struggled at times with this. How do you document the student interest and student needs, as well as how do you document the workforce needs for particular graduates? And it was interesting this morning that Dr. Peebles brought it up. He actually brought it up himself and said that it is a difficult thing to do. And I think that's what every one of us could agree with. It is difficult sometimes to come up with ways to access the student need. I think the workforce need for me has always been a little easier. But I'm going to turn that over to Alan, and he wanted to lead this discussion.
Yeah, that's what it is, a discussion. We just wanted to get some feedback from you all about what the best ways the coordinating board can use to document the demand, student demand for new programs on your campus. We're very sensitive to workforce need here. When we look at new programs, a very high priority for the Commissioner's office, up through our office as well, is trying to get a sense of, is this program necessary? Is it really going to be investment in the community, investment in the state? Because when the state puts resources in, it's often at the state level, they want to see the resources coming back out. So workforce need is really very important. And the stronger you can make the case for workforce need in applications for new programs, the smoother things tend to go for your program. And that's especially true when it gets to the board level. When the board meeting itself is going on and the cost committee meeting is going on, when there are questions to institutions about new programs, they are often about the workforce need. What are the, what is this program going to be contributing? And in addition to that, it's also keeping in mind what's best for the students, because here at the coordinating board, at all levels, there's a strong concern about student debt. There's a strong concern about institutions admitting students, putting them through 5-year degree programs, graduating them with tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and then limited job prospects when they come out. So we really want to begin this discussion with an encouragement from our level, because we're trying to work with you to get these programs to the point where we can say yes. And that's our collaborative philosophy here that Rex mentioned before. We really want to work with you to get these programs to be the best they can be and get them to the point they can be improved. And that's often our number one stumbling block. Our biggest wall to have to overcome is justifying the workforce. So I just want to emphasize that to you, first of all. About documenting student need. it is tricky. Rex, when he was here, said that he wasn't sure there really is a way to assess student demand for new programs. That's an awfully high bar to overcome. I'm not so sure I'll go along with that. There are ways to document student demand, but there's no real consensus about the best way to go about doing it. So I wanted to just put the idea in your mind that it's a good idea to get creative and to be assertive about ways to document student demand for new programs. Often this is the weakest part of applications that we get, especially for new doctoral programs. Of course, this also goes for engineering programs and bachelor's degrees over $2 million. Evidence of student demand for new programs is often anecdotal, along the lines of, well, we get lots of calls. Or students often ask us about, when are you going to get a doctoral program like this? Also, this section of the application sometimes digresses into descriptions of the field or general comments about its contribution to the American economy and things like that. We get these kind of essays about, I'll just pick an example here, something like chemical engineering is an essential component of multiple industries. It's important to pharmaceuticals, it's important to household cleaners, it's important to agriculture. And where would America be without chemical engineering? And that's okay, but it's not really going to get us to the point where we can get it past the board members who really want to see, is there evidence of student demand for this? So what would be more helpful to us is if you could find ways to put into your documentation a description of why your institution in particular needs this program in particular at this time in particular. It needs to be this, it needs to be us, and it needs to be now. And if you have a way to prove that to us, that is really what we're looking for. That's why we ask for evidence of workforce demand and student demand. Why this program, why here, and why now? And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts and can share with each other some of the best practices to achieve that. Now, in terms of practical ways to look up some of this data, coordinating board staff often turn to two places first for workforce demand. One is the Texas Workforce Commission, which has very good, solid 10-year workforce projection needs for many of the key job disciplines. That often doesn't translate effectively into academic disciplines, of course. For example, educational administration. Well, okay, but we've got workforce data needs on educators, but not, and we have workforce need on high school and primary school education administrators, but they don't track data on university level administrators. So if you have information about those kinds of things that Texas Workforce Need doesn't track, or a case to make, that's especially helpful to us. But I encourage you to look at the Texas Workforce Commission when you look at the job projections and the data numbers, because that's also what we're looking at. The same goes on the national level for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS website for the U.S. Department of Labor. They have projections as well, and often that's where we benchmark our numbers for the projected need of certain disciplines. If the academic field that you're proposing a new degree in doesn't dovetail nicely with what you see in the BLS, then extra efforts you can make on your part to document the trends that you see in the discipline are particularly helpful. We also look at job advertisements placed by the relevant professional societies. So if you know what those job societies are, and we don't, then educate us, please, on where to look best for those job advertisements. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at job information data for hospitality administration at the University of Houston. And there's the best place that people turn to at the PhD level for teaching positions and senior leadership positions in hospitality management isn't from a professional association. It isn't from an accreditation board. It's just a private website. It's just a website that's, I don't know if it's a for-profit website, but it's just a website called jobsandhospitalityadministration.com or something to that effect. And I wouldn't have not known about that unless it had been pointed out to me. But it is the best go-to place by far where serious job seekers look. So that's the kind of information that you can do to help us supplement what we may or may not find in professional organizations when they post their job ads. Those are excellent places to start. Also, where the coordinating board has difficulty sometime in documenting this, and where you can really help us, is in the question of regional job demand. Victor made the comment earlier today, is perfectly apt, that Texas is such a ginormous state that what is going on in Houston may not be of any relevance to what's going on in El Paso in terms of regional demand. Well, see, you know that, and we may not. So that's the case you really need to zero in on. If there are reasons why area industries in your region can hire your graduates, that's crucial information. We've approved some applications here recently that made an extremely compelling case for regional job demand, and they had letters attached to their application from industries saying, yes, we will hire these graduates, and here's why. Here's what is in the curriculum that we need them to know. This is what the institution is going to be producing, and here are our job demands. And it made a very compelling case. So if you have your particular regional information about student demand and workforce need, then that could be really where your efforts can be the most rewarding and what sets your application apart and really helps us here. Another thing that we look at is the capacity of existing programs. This is often a high concern of our board members. They want to know, well, why should we start an expensive new program from scratch at institution A when there are already programs at institution B and C where we can invest a quarter of that sum, have them hire 2 new faculty members, and accept the same number of 10 incoming students that your new PhD program is like. And it's a good question. If you're planning to admit 10 new PhD students a year for a new program, well, maybe the program at another university could expand and accept those same 10 students for a fraction of the cost. So if you have a compelling reason to make that argument, then that's also what we need to see. And frankly, the only way to do that is to get on the phone to your other institutions and ask them. And we encourage, if there's going to be any conflicts between institutions about new degree programs, our new policy and our new priority here is that this gets resolved before the coordinating board gets your application for the new program, not after. Okay. We are happy to coordinate, that's what we do. But we're not really the negotiators. And if there's going to be another program that's similar to yours down the road, it would behoove you well to get a feel for what their reaction is going to be to your new program and get a sense of, could they expand, should they expand, are there some opportunities for two programs to collaborate. And if there's a strong desire for a new program at your institution and another program isn't at full capacity, it doesn't spell doom for your program, but it might be an indicator that you need a niche. You need to have something that makes your program very distinctive from the other program that still has capacity. So just to let you know, that's also what we do here. We call around too and get a sense from the other institutions. Are they at capacity? Can you physically grow? Is there enough office space? It's an important consideration too. So I'd like to hear from you as well about what you can tell us about how you think the coordinating board can better assess regional demand. I sensed a little frustration when Rex was in here that you want the coordinating board to understand the regional needs of the institutions, that you know best the programs that you need to have. Well, how can the coordinating board know that? What are the best ways that we can use to get that from you?
But again, I think this comes, if you're done.
Yes, I am, yes.
Okay. So I think one thing that all of us talked about is, especially regions like in South Texas, and I think we talked about this a lot, is you cannot assume, for us a student moving from Kingsville down to Houston, they have gone so far up north that they are going to actually be wondering that, it's not very easy for students because of regional, especially minority students about moving. So having a program that's similar, that's up in Dallas or so, does not just mean that the students are willing to actually transfer, and opening that opportunity, you're actually focusing, you're going to increase the disparity between the minority students that are focused on this and the non-minority students. So, it's inherent in there. A lot of programs are catered, trying to increase minority enrollment in certain programs in the STEM fields and so on. And I'm saying, I think we can find a lot of research that says that the tendency of those students to actually move to bigger institutions is a lot less than going to a regional institution that's close to where they are. So that's something that's very important for you guys to consider.
And to build on what he's saying is it's not just about that they're regionally situated, although that's a big part of it. The other part is our institutions accept different types of students and cater to different types of students and have support facilities for different types of students. So some of us may deal much more with a first-generation student than other universities may. There's things like that also that we have built-in supports at some of our institutions for particular types of students, and there's nowhere in that for us to explain that somebody that would come to us may not ever want to go to the University of Texas Austin, but they would want to come to Sam Houston, and vice versa. Someone who would go to the University of Texas Austin may not ever want to come to Sam Houston, and so part of that is where they're physically located, but part of it is the type of student that they are and what they'll be looking for those needs, and that doesn't mean that those needs are still not needing to be met. And part of the problem we have when we call, we can get calls in almost every program I've ever called, and we say, we can't take any more, we're at capacity, we can't take any more. And so we spend a lot of time calling to we can't take any more. We've taken the amount of students that we can take. But that's not really convincing from what I can tell when we put that in there. Well, yeah, but if they just took one person, I've actually been told that if they just took one more student, each of these programs took one, that would take all your students and you wouldn't need that. But they've all told us they wouldn't. But so I guess my question is, what is it that you really need? Because we're being told by the programs themselves, we can't, we won't hire more, we're not planning on going in that direction, and yet when you give that information, that's not always information that's accepted as dealing with this capacity issue. Oftentimes we're told, yeah, but there's enough that if they just took one, and I believe every one of those programs could take one. And so I guess that's also the other question is, what is it really that they're asking about for the capacity? Because it does seem like there's something else behind that. And then also that there's other things to take into account as far as people not being willing to locate long distances. And Texas, as it is spread out.
Well, it's always an interesting issue to try to balance the tightrope act really at the doctoral level.
Right.
At the undergraduate level, that
really
position is obvious. There needs to be regional accessibility for all kinds of undergraduate programs. For academic doctoral programs, it's a little tricky. Is it better, just in theory, would it be better to have two absolute first-rate, nationally ranked law schools where we put in all of our resources into just killer Ivy League level law schools? Or would it be better to spread those resources around and have 6 or 10 law schools scattered evenly distributed around the state for the convenience of students, but not have the kind of state resources to put into them to make each one of them.
And I think what we're saying is it depends what kind of student you're trying to attract. If we wanted to attract minority students, a big portion of them are not going to go into those exactly places that you're talking about. They're not going to want to be there. They're going to be wanting to be near their communities and the support of their families. And they're not going to be the typical upper white middle class person who says, yes, I'm going off to wherever I want to go for my PhD. That's a very different group of students, and they don't illustrate the same behaviors, and the research does show that they don't illustrate those same behaviors. Does that make sense?
It does, and in that case, we also get sometimes the chicken comes before the egg in some places, and sometimes the egg before the chicken. And by that, I mean build it and they will come kind of an idea. There are some places where students are demanding a kind of program, and there may be other places where programs are demanding certain kinds of students.
That's interesting.
And in the case of having minorities in a law school would be a good example. We don't have enough minorities in the profession. So if we build our school here in a place where those minorities are, we'll be helping the profession. There might not be an overwhelming student demand that we can point to, or people beating down our door saying, build us a law school. But there could be a case to be made for, if there were a law school here, look at what it would do to our region.
So that's an argument we could make.
That's an argument that you could make. sorry, this is my peripheral vision. So. Yes, please.
So I'd like to hear you say that again. That's an argument that we could make, that the students would have the social environment and support that they would need to complete the doctoral program without being required to assimilate into a different culture. Because I am Hispanic. I grew up in Southern California, and I went to University of California, San Diego. The only Hispanic, and of course people don't have to know, and so that's how I went through, because we mentor people that look like our brothers and sisters. And so if we keep sending our Hispanic students who don't look like the faculty, they get eaten up and chewed out and spit out. And so I think I would really like to hear the coordinating board echo that they at least hear this, that we need to think about what people need to succeed in their environment rather than continuing to ask them to assimilate into the existing culture. You don't have to agree with me. I just want to know that that's really been heard. I think historically, students are asked to assimilate. And I'm asking, do you hear that we're asking for a change in culture, which is asking the institutions to be the environment that our students need?
Certainly hear that. I think that message is especially clear for the professional programs. For the academic programs, there is more pressure to build higher quality, rigorous programs in fewer of them in the state, where there's not a guaranteed workforce. I'll just pick one at random here, let's say a history PhD. The case might be more difficult to make that we need a history PhD because there isn't one nearby, when we can say, but there's an excellent one 300 miles away, where you could really get a top-notch national degree. And the job field for PhDs in history is so ferociously competitive now that unless you're going to a really top-level program, you're really not going to have much of a chance. For a professional field, that case is much stronger.
I'm sorry, I missed the point, because I'm coming from STEM programs, and STEM programs is where the U.S. is leading. So I don't know what you mean by professional. I'm thinking about STEM programs that really right now are majority international students. So I'm talking about building doctoral programs and STEM programs.
I think that would be a compelling case to me, that there are ways that we can educate successful STEM graduates here better than a program, a competing program.
Better here
than somewhere where a student is going to have much.
When you say here, you mean a particular institution.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, speaking in terms of an institution in someplace like El Paso, Brownsville, San Antonio, where there are unique strengths to those institutions with those communities. James, you want to say anything?
Actually, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what
I was just listening to the conversation. One thing that appears to me is that it says documentation of student and workforce need. And what I'm suggesting is that would it be easier, because coordinating board has to quantify everything and they have to satisfy the board members. Would it be easier if we also present the student profile, especially the demographic profile of the student, and the institutional strength in addressing the needs of these students? And if we predicate the needs against this profile and the institutional strength.
I think that would address some of what I'm talking about.
And probably some successes, as you said, in particular to the STEM programs or so, that can be taken to another program that doesn't exist. So if we have done a good job with one program, can this be expanded or extended to
And
other
we can
programs?
rationalize it against the Closing the Gaps initiatives and how we address bridging those gaps for minorities or first generation students. So that way we can make a more coherent argument, a stronger argument.
Yes.
To the board.
Right. Putting things in the terms and the framework of closing the gaps goals is essential. Very
And using concrete demographic,
Yes.
examples and facts.
But are you going to want to hear about the support networks that are required to be successful in those STEM fields with the populations you're speaking of?
Which probably are already in place, that's what
Yes,
you're
well,
saying.
are they? I don't think that that's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's
Academic support services, other things that we know are required to help this population succeed in graduate level programs. We've been documenting this for quite some time now. If we don't have that infrastructure in place, then you can build a great academic program, but those students are still going to walk in and walk right back out because they're not going to get what they need to survive.
If I might interject, I totally agree with the fact that the support structures are needed. How might that also be interpreted as then are they, how do I say this gently, that they are then not capable of surviving in a different environment, and somehow the programs are going to be different than if they were at a Research One institution. I'm saying the interpretation can be there. If they need these support structures and they need these special considerations, then are they really worthy of a doctoral degree? Because the interpretation has on occasion been there.
I see your point. In other words, if you go too far out of your way to say, oh, look at all these special things you're going to have for, let's use your example, Hispanic students. And if you, her concern might be if you go too far with that, now you're painting these students as sort of hothouse flowers and can't possibly survive in any other environment, which would be going too far in a particular direction. I think that's is that the point you're trying to make. Yes, sir.
I would have to argue that that one's easy. That's an easy line not to come too close to.
Okay.
I mean, because certainly, the question is not the qualifications of the student, I would argue, or the potential of the student. It's all of the other aspects that are preventing the student from taking advantage of what opportunities may be available elsewhere. And that's the way that I mean, again, that's what we do at TSU, and that's what our law school does, the minority serving law school.
Right.
So I think that I think it's a fairly easy line to avoid.
Okay. Mostly by focusing on the social capital and other aspects of this that speak to the student as a person rather than simply focusing on their academic qualifications.
Correct.
Okay. That's a useful clarification.
But do you have any specific ideas about documenting particularly student demand? We've seen surveys of students. We've seen surveys of students in supporting master's degree programs. Sometimes those surveys are pretty good, pretty thorough. Sometimes they're frankly a little embarrassing. They're very anecdotal. There's no control group. There's no, it's just like, as part of a end of semester class evaluation, there's a show of hands, and out of 9 students, 4 of them said they'd be interested in the PhD program.
Yeah.
We don't know what that means. We don't know what interested was. We don't know what the question they were asked was. There's not enough pool of students to really say. So if there's a way that you can really do a little bit more with documenting student student demand for new programs, it would really be helpful. And if you had any good ideas, it would be a good opportunity to share them with each other.
I would point out that the best thing you could do is address what Alan just described, which is too much informality. I mean, all of you have various types of psychology departments, psychometricians, various fields that measure human things, right? Measure things in the human world. And even though I went into a different field, I do have a little bit of understanding of the importance of constructing survey instruments, making sure that they're reliable, and making sure that, okay, if you have a response rate, what is the response rate? And how many people did you sample to get that kind of response rate? Right? These kinds of questions are basic when we're dealing with data. And not just, oh, hey, one of my professors, I can't remember who, asked the students to raise their hands. And look, 12 students raised their hand and said they'd be interested in a doctoral program. We can all do better than that. And so I'm urging you to utilize the resources that you already have at your institutions. Get the people in that department to work with one of the other fields that specializes in doing surveys and measurement instruments. Get them to tighten that stuff up, because that way we'll have something we can go to the commissioner with, we can go to the board with, and point to that's a very data-driven sort of thing, and not just an informal sort of thing.
So the problem with that approach, well, if you have the right pool in your population to survey, you're going to get that information. But if you're hoping to attract a whole different type of student that isn't at your institution, you miss that completely.
Right.
So one model that may work, I don't know, if it's, you can also often track what another university has done, or at least get some data that says they started a new degree in chemical engineering. Just make that one up. And when you start a new degree, this tends to be the growth trajectory of that degree. Because if you don't have a bunch of chemical students interested in chemical engineering, doesn't matter what survey you send out. And it doesn't matter if they raise their hand and say, yeah, I'd be interested. Whether they apply and enter the program and are successful is another whole step. So I think sometimes you got to look at other institutions that have started something new and try to compare yourself to that. Are you a similar institution, a similar dynamic of students, and what has been their success? It just might be another piece of data.
Yeah, that's a good concrete suggestion. And there are two ways you can get at that in terms of what I know. A, call up the institution, call up the department directly and say, hey, okay, you started up in 2009. What were your first 5 years of enrollments like? How many qualified students did you turn away, or are you turning away now? That's a big question to ask your colleagues. How many qualified students are you turning away in that existing program that you have that's like this program I want to start? You can also look on our TexasHigherEdData.org site. That's where a lot of the CBM data is repository for that. If you look in the profile reports, you can get things like enrollments and declared majors. So you could also get coordinating more data on, okay, there's an atmospheric science program at University of Houston, it's a doctoral program, relatively new. I think you guys started in 2008 or so. Okay, since this program has started, what have their enrollments been like? What's their attrition rates been like? And what's student demand? Hey, let's call up Dimitri and hey, can you talk to your department head? And are you accepting every qualified student that you get, or are you turning some away? And if so, how many each year? And that'll give you a sense of that. Probably the closest thing to a good sense that we can get. Because an overall comment I wanted to make is to keep in mind, above all, you're not just documenting workforce need. You're not just documenting student demand. You're documenting unmet workforce need, unmet student demand, right? Who cares if there's a study by by HOBET or some other national body saying, yes, we're going to, in the next 10 years, we're going to need more electrical engineers. And that was produced 5 years ago. And now when we look at the production of electrical engineers in Texas, we see, and we would see, actually, because I've checked into this recently, we are already producing twice as many electrical engineers per year as our own workforce commission says that we need. Now, I'm not saying that's a shut and dry case. It may not be, because all of these are always estimates and projections. What I'm saying is, if you only come to me with this application that says, look, James, Texas Workforce Commission says that we're going to need 5,000 electrical engineers between now and 2020. That's great, but according to the baseline of what we're already producing, we're already producing twice that number broken down in an annual figure that we need. So, okay, I guess we don't need it. If you haven't engaged that data, if you have not even engaged the production data, you've not really begun to make the full length of the argument. You've only addressed one half of the equation. So that would be my overall message to you, is look at current production as well as forecasted demand.
What about those areas that are interdisciplinary, or new areas that don't fit into any of the
Forensic
workforce
science,
commission?
perhaps.
Workforce commission areas.
Right.
I mean, we went around trying to answer that question ourselves, but I think that comes across for a lot of us when we're dealing with interdisciplinary, and also that question of how do you know this needs a doctorate, or how do you know this needs a master's precise? It's not always split up so easily to be able to say that.
I'm glad you mentioned that in light of the things that we talked about with Rex this morning. If you want the coordinating board to, what you were saying to Rex is you want the coordinating board to understand the nature of these interdisciplinary programs, and they don't always fit neatly into these set categories. Sometimes, and we see this a lot, they don't even fit into the CIP codes very well. The CIP codes are falling under the, .0000 for other, or, general, But it's our job to understand it, I agree, but the way we do that is because you have to tell it to us. You need to explain to us in a way that we get it and that we can summarize it and present it clearly to the board members and the commission. What that interdisciplinary program is, make the case for it. Don't expect us to just intuit that we know that this is a trend in the discipline. You've got to really explain it to us in a way that we can explain it in turn to others, including the public. And one way to do that could be effectively through the question of student demand. Right? There is an unmet need in the field because we need students who can do this and this. We saw a really good application not long ago for engineering leadership, for example, an undergraduate degree. And they made the case, well, we've got plenty of business administrators, we have plenty of engineers, but what the profession needs is engineering leaders. And so they put together an interdisciplinary program that was part of the business school, part of the engineering school, and they mixed and matched it and made various tracks, and then they provided letters from area industries saying we will hire these graduates because they do what we need, and we need them at this level, at the baccalaureate level, not just at the master's level. So that's an example of an interdisciplinary, innovative degree, and the institution made a strong case for it. And the way they made that case was through workforce demand and student demand. And unmet, as James said, the emphasis on the unmet student need and workforce demand. And it made a compelling case that way. Sorry.
I think we need to be a little bit careful in trying to close a box on something. The outcome of our efforts at the university level is to produce creative thinkers that are educated and adaptable. Okay, if we can't do that, then we can't clone each other. We need to get away from that. We need to get to the point where the individual that comes out is not looking for a particular target job, but is looking for opportunity to be able to work in an environment. I'll give you an example. We had a student that was working in physics on the superconducting super collider that was terminated 2 years into his degree program, a doctoral student. That would have devastated most students. He turned his attention to, he was working on neural networks as a means of collecting large data fluxes from the superconducting super collider. He continued and got his degree in physics. Then he applied to an open request from M&M Mars, the candy company, that runs a 5-year program. Every 5 years they go out looking for new talent. And he made the following application. He said, look, your company needs to be at the frontier of computer technology as you develop the next stage of your company. I'm working on neural networks. I can really modernize your computer capabilities. He said, what does your company depend on? It depends on the growth of cocoa beans. Cocoa beans grow on plantations. You need to know what the yield is from the cocoa bean plantations that you rely on. I was a teaching assistant, or he was a teaching assistant, in a course that my wife taught on weather and climate. He made the argument that he knew how to compute and model what the yield would be from each and every one of the applications that they were relying on. And lastly, he said, look, I've got a pilot's license. I can fly to the plantations and say the stuff is growing. He got the job. He beat out Harvard and everybody else. He was a physicist, for God's sake. Okay? The story, that was almost the end of the story. The problem was he was from Louisiana. M&M Mars, the candy company, is in Trenton, New Jersey. That was a fate worse than death for a southerner to have to go and work in Trenton, New Jersey. But he did. 2 years into the program, he went into the CEO and he said, look, I've done everything. You've got a modern computer technology capability now. You know where your yield is coming from. I've been to the plantations. I don't need to live here. He now lives in Louisiana and works for M&M Mars. The point was he wasn't a physicist. He was all of those things. He brought together knowledge and mental capacity. If we can do that for our students, I think it's much more important to be able to point to that success where the students go as the yield of our outcomes in efforts like that. I just worry a little bit that we're closing the box here if we talk about workforce needs based on a particular degree program. I'm just a little worried. I understand people are attracted into the program, but they have to be versatile when they come out of it, because you can't predict the market absolutely. We're not building clones for the academic arena anymore. We're looking for people who can survive in the real world.
I have to think about those old TV commercials where the person with the chocolate bar bumps into the lady with the peanut butter jar, you know, and they make the Reese's, pieces, the peanut butter meets the chocolate.
I'm sorry,
bar.
I didn't mean to get off.
I have experience at the superconductor, super collider side and colliding side, crashing together peanut butter and chocolate.
I would add to that, Austin. We have that discussion a lot in terms of looking at looking at placement.
Right.
And what qualifies as a good placement. What do we think of as a good placement?
Right.
And really having to sort of broaden our perspective of what success in a program is. It's not always going to be academic placement. And it's not always going to be an academic placement. And so what are other definitions of success from a program?
An industry is looking for versatility. That's what they want. They want people who can think about a problem and look at it in many different ways and move it forward.
And that is, to kind of take away a general point, when you do have some sort of emerging field or an interdisciplinary field, one of the things that you can and probably should fall back on is, well, we can't really model something exactly like this for you, but look, here are 4 or 5 other interdisciplinary / emerging field disciplines that we already have at our university, and here's our placement rates for each of the past 3 years for each of those. And look what a good job we do. People want our interdisciplinary doctoral students. They get jobs. And so that at least provides some data-based, factually based way to say, yes, this is new. It's hard to quantify what kind of jobs these people will get. But based on a track record in similar situations, we're sure we will get them jobs. They will end up somewhere.
Look, I've been in the College of Business as a faculty member for 30 years. I have a PhD in environmental engineering. So I do sort of clone myself. I have chaired 18 dissertations. Every single one of my students is placed in an academic institution. Stephen F. Austin, Texas State, Georgia Southern. Well, people from Stanford aren't looking to go to those schools. And so my students are marketable because they've taught, because they've published articles, because they're going to be successful in it. And so there's a place for other institutions besides just the most elite to have doctoral programs. And the Coordinating Board probably knows that at one level, but it's not an easy sell.
Yeah. Part of it is that this is an era of efficiency and cost reduction and tightening belts. And so that's a pretty pervasive atmosphere. People at the board level, our commissioner, and the legislatures, the governor, they're all aware that doctoral programs cost money. On a general basis, we also know that, again, because of the era that we're in, belt tightening, fiscal austerity, we know that there's not going to be a bunch of money added into the higher education pot. So, when it comes time for you guys to get formula funding, it's all one big pot. It's one big pie that we're slicing up. So if Victor, if you add 5 programs, and Austin adds 2, and Bill adds 1, and Kevin adds 3, now all those programs, now we're just slicing the pie even smaller. We're trying to serve a lot of needs. We're trying to have economic development across the state, in sectors of the state that did not have as much of it in the past, and with demographics that did not benefit as much from it in the past. But the kind of the flip side of that is that there's a broadening side, and then there's also the quality side. Right? Okay, if we are going to have doctoral programs, and we are, then we want them to be as high quality as they can be, and where possible, to be nationally recognized. And all of you, no matter your size or type, have things like that. Programs that even though, yeah, you know, we're not Stanford, you know, we're not Ivy League schools for the most part, but still, within our broad range of programs, we have some that are recognized as the best or among the best in the nation. So we're trying to balance there between broad accessibility and high quality, and that means that sometimes the lens through which we view these applications leans more toward one side than the other in that question.
Okay, we've had some. Oh,
I guess I have a question about student demand. For example, we have students that have been successful at Harvard. They'll get their master's in our school, and then they'll go on to Harvard, North Carolina State, Florida, go on to prestigious jobs. So, in a way, sometimes we can be shooting ourselves in the foot because you would say, well, you're just a pipeline. So how do we avoid someone, the coordinating board, coming back and saying, well, you're doing a good job as a pipeline university, and so we're really not interested in developing doctoral programs at your university because your students are well prepared, they're going on, they're getting PhDs at Harvard, tenured at the University of Michigan, and we have case after case after case where our students, we're feeding other states' research programs. So I would suggest that where that when you're thinking about evaluating a doctoral program, or a proposal for a doctoral program, to look and see what institutions are the students being placed in. That shows that the students are qualified. The students are qualified to complete a doctoral program. Do you have any comments about that?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful data, and it's helpful if institutions could do a better job generally about tracking that. We do. It's part of the 18 characteristics that you need to report the placement information. But sometimes the data, not often, but sometimes we see data that's really spotty about where your graduates are getting placed. What percentage of them are in academia, what percentage are in the workforce, what percent go into private industry. The more data you have along those lines, the better. And if we had the specific names of the institutions where your graduates are getting postdocs, are getting assistant professorships, that would be fantastic. I would love to see data like that, and I wish we could see it more often. So it's often difficult to keep those tight strings on your alumni to have them report that information back. But if you can, it would be wonderful. Wonderful.
Joanne?
Alan, a couple of meetings ago, I don't think I dreamt this, wasn't there talk about us being able to track students through the driver's license? And that the TechStop was willing to work with us on that? Did I dream that?
I don't remember.
Seriously?
All the tracking of graduates that we do is through the Workforce Commission.
Seriously?
Yeah. Not through TechStop.
Well, not that it was happening, but that the potential was there and somebody was willing to work with us on that.
I vaguely recollect that
right?
the TWC information was limited to Texas, and I think we discussed this at the pre-GEAC meeting, at our last meeting, and it was basically looking into what opportunities exist to get information at least on a more national, at least a national basis, instead of just being restricted to. I didn't remember the attachment of a driver's license to that, but and actually, that may have been a discussion led by Kevin Lemoyne.
Joanne, that was also part of the
He's on, he's on, okay.
That's part of the what?
And the CTSB.
Oh.
CTS has an initiative.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Excuse me, just a second.
Thanks for making that point.
This university's tracking him right now on that phone.
Okay, uh-huh.
Now, on the tech side, there is a institutions that they do have access to that data, and we've provided some information on how to obtain that data. The only thing with the data is that you'll get weekly batches of the data, and then you'll get all of Texas, all the database. So then for you to look at it and then start doing the research and matching and then you'll only get address data. But the partner board does have that data. And again, we can probably provide that information to the institutions of how, or we provided that information to the institutions on how to obtain the data. But again, it's a huge data set. So you have to be careful on what you're asking.
Yeah. Well, this has been an interesting discussion. Alan, you gotten some ideas?
Very much, thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
that's good.
thank you.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to hear more. You can always email me, and we'll keep our notes straight about this. I appreciate your input.
I think we're going to go a little out of order because we have some guests here on a particular topic, and that topic is number 11 on your agenda, the discussion of Apply Texas graduate program applications and recruiting strategies. And so Alan and, Joanne, let me go to you, and maybe you can kind of give us an introduction. Joanne first brought this to our attention, and so she'd be a good person to start.
Well, thank you for that. Actually, Jose and I discussed it a little bit, and I could give the context, but I don't know how familiar everyone is with Apply Texas and what it does and all of the particulars around it. So it might be more helpful if Jose starts by giving an overview of Apply Texas, and then I'll give the context, and then we can go back and forth with
And
questions.
Jose, you want to introduce yourself so people will know who you are.
Jose Rios, Assistant Director for Academic Affairs and Research. I'm over federal compliance, and Apply Texas is one of my special projects under me. The Apply Texas, it started in 1997. It initially was to create a paper application, common application for four-year institutions. In 2005, the statute was revised or amended to include two-year institutions into the mix. Graduate admissions was never the goal, or was never an intention of Apply Texas. But whenever we started doing Apply Texas, it has grown more than the initial intent. Currently, we have 9 different types of applications in county. We have a freshman, international and national application, transfer, graduate application, readmit, and a two-year application. The system itself, we are processing 1.4 million applications a year, an academic year. That's the fall, spring, summer. 61% of that application is four-year institution, and of course 39% is two-year institution. Out of the 61%, 145 applications are graduate applications. And then again, we do have a breakdown of international graduate applicants and then the graduate applicants.
Would you go back over that figure? How many out of the 61, out of the 4-year, what number are graduate?
145,000.
145,000. Okay. Okay.
I thought it was 145,000. I'm sorry, 145,000. Again, the graduate is voluntary. There's not a statute that you are required to use Apply Texas. Currently we have 36 institutions using Apply Texas for the graduate, using the graduate application. 3 private institutions and 1 health science institution. So I think that's the context of how a brief overview of Apply Texas. Again, the cost of Apply Texas is under the cost recovery. So we have a methodology that is specified under a rider in our GAA or under a corporation, how we collect the money from the institutions. Currently, there's not any cost at the state level that the graduate schools are contributing to Apply Texas. Right now, the formula is based on undergraduate enrollment at 4 years at the institution. So graduate enrollment is not even considered in the allocation. So it's free on the cost.
Okay, thanks. All right, so now a little bit of context into how this came to be on my lap. Texas A&M had its own homegrown. It worked very hard to create one that was very graduate user friendly. It was smaller. It wasn't as involved as the Apply Texas. And then along came a consultant from Noel Levitt who said, you're really missing out on all these potential prospects for recruitment. If you were using Apply Texas, your graduate enrollment would be much higher. That got the attention of the higher ups. And so then the pressure was put on to go to Apply Texas. And all I had ever been assured by my staff was it's going to be a delay. There's going to be at least a 2-day delay turnaround in getting the apps. And I thought that was the biggest obstacle until I got into the weeds. And it became far more complex than that. So just a little background. The Apply Texas application itself is 12 modules. And it's very involved. And it asks for everything from high school transcripts to what organizations were you in, a lot of stuff that is not relevant to graduate education. So we pared it down and we were able to eliminate 7 of those, only use 5, and some of those 5 are somewhat modifiable. There's still some things in there that we have no control over. But then there were other issues. How you pay. We worked really hard to not have people send us checks. Now that's an option. Getting support documents to us was another issue. Extensive IT support is needed. So for example, because the application says Social Security number optional, some will put it. It comes through, it gets sent out to faculty. There's this huge storm. Why are you sending us Social Security numbers? But IT has a way to scrub it for channeling to us, but it means that they have to work with us and their attention has been elsewhere. And then the month after we started, we had one of our key programs. They had the first deadline. The day after, they were calling in a panic. Nobody can find our program on Apply Texas. What happened? It's your fault. So all of that sort of thing. Well, so we learned that when the enforced deadline hits, the program falls off the list of options that students can apply for. And with us, because the graduate students, you know how they wait till the last minute, they could apply up to the last minute. And so now it's not so feasible unless we change how we do it. And so that's been an interesting struggle. And then the other thing that happens is apparently there can be more push-outs from the state than once a day. There can be, I don't know, multiple. But if the undergraduate only wants it once a day, then all the applications only come once a day. They come after 6 o'clock, and then somebody has to be in the undergraduate office to push it to graduate. That, I understand, can be circumvented, still requires some IT intervention. So at the last ATGS meeting, Austin was kind enough to put out the word for those of us that were interested in doing something to get together and discuss where we were, would we use it, what would we want done differently. And Jose Rios and Michelle Walker from A&M College Station, who is chair of the committee, the Apply Texas committee, met with us and heard some of our concerns. And so the decision was that they would entertain what it was we wanted on a grad app. Since then, they sent out all of the apps, and I don't know how many respondents you got, but essentially we put, can't use this, would like this, this might be an option. So Friday, some of us, I'm hoping all of us that are on the ATGS list received what that survey, that application now looks like for review and vetting, especially for those institutions that use it. But the question I have is, of all the institutions that I'm going to say allegedly use it, to what extent is it used? Is it used as the sole application? Is it used as an optional application? Because that would make a difference in terms of how much interest you have in doing anything with it. And then I'm sorry.
No.
I also got the THECB. It's going to be in San Antonio in June. And I understand that the sessions are going to be very focused on graduate education. And one of the presentations is from Reyes Perez. And he's going to...
Austin.
From UT Austin. And the topic is Apply Texas, discussing the setup and use of the Apply Texas application for graduate programs. So, I was going to ask you about that. So anyway, so that's where we are. That what it means is that every institution has had to reinvent the wheel in terms of what they do and how they do it to make Apply Texas work for them. And that's where we are. That's a short.
Okay, so let's see, how many of you are using Apply Texas that are in this room?
Oh, we are.
Not fully.
Not fully?
Your portion.
Yeah, it looks like we've got everybody doing it, but maybe you do something else besides, right?
Ours is completely Apply Texas.
Okay, and we are completely Apply Texas. That is all we do, and it works great for us. Yeah.
Because they didn't know anything before then, right? I mean, they didn't have any other option that was simpler and easier. And
no, we just made the decision that it was good for our institution to use one application format because IT could focus on one instead of a myriad of things. And we still have graduate programs who request their own, and some of you probably do this, and we probably are going to do this also. But some of the CAS programs, which are the usually health science related programs, who have a national, what do you call it? It's like a registry where they submit everything and then it's sent out to schools that the students are interested in. I mean, we're doing that with one program, and we're going to do it with some others. But for us, it has been very, very effective. But then we have a very good IT to make it work.
There are.
I have a question, if I may. It may not be the appropriate place, but from Mr. Rios, I understand that I think through the undergraduate education advisory council that there's a task force looking at possibly mandating nursing schools use Apply Texas. Is that
Yes.
right?
And it was
Where are we in that process? And I ask because being a health-related institution, in addition to Apply Texas, we use 7 other application services, and that is very taxing on our staff, on our IT resources, and whatnot. But of course, when you ask the faculty and the deans of those schools that are so profession-driven, they're going to come back and say that our accreditors really want us to be using this other health science in San Antonio. Sorry. So I'm curious where you all are in that investigation or research.
Yes, so the statute itself gave us the language for us to do some preliminary findings. We have a year to figure out whether this is cost effective and feasible to implement something. We had an RFA that we wanted the feedback from everyone. So we put out an RFA and actually paid the travel for every institution that had a nursing program was eligible to receive that grant to pay for travel to meetings. We had our first meeting. From that RFA, we had 38 institutions that responded to the RFA. One of the requirements to receive the money that they have to provide us the local application of what they use, so that we can have, so that we did some analysis before the first meeting. We had the first meeting, we had some additional discussion, and we had a live blog to get more feedback from the group. Out of that, from all those activities, the subcommittee of Texas actually created a subcommittee to help us on this issue. So the subcommittee was actually charged with figuring out whether it was cost effective to create something. The statute doesn't provide us any type of implementation date, so that's kind of a way to make, I guess, put some costs and kind of our resources aligned with what we currently have with Apply Texas and make it cost effective. So the recommendation will be that it will be cost effective to create an Apply Texas nursing application for institutions that do not currently have an online system. Because we cannot provide the type of service and the level of service that CAS provides. And it would be, it would be a disservice for those institutions to be mandated to turn back and use Apply Texas. So if you're using CAS or any online system, currently that's where the recommendations will be presented at the policy and at the board meeting.
That's good feedback. As much as I would love to go back to having one system, I know it's not going to give us all the data that we're already used to collecting and using to analyze our applicant rules and make inspections for community permissions and so forth.
Like the one thing that we do not provide is getting student transcripts into Apply Texas and having a transcript evaluation component in Apply Texas. That still has to be an admissions process at the institutions. And if you can provide that, and if your students can pay $30, that's fine to get that type of service. CAS is a really good system for four-year institutions because the cost is, the institution doesn't pay anything to use the system, but the students are paying for the service. It is not a good service for a two-year institution where applications are zero already, and now you're adding a $30 cost to that student to apply to per application. I think it's like $40 for the first application and $30 for additional applications. So it's not a good system for two-year institutions, the CAS.
So we have Apply Texas, again, 125 rec programs all have their own separate requirements, which became a burden because students that they think their application is in grad school, but we now want to move to further after a transcript evaluation and processing on our part to the program, and the program is missing something. It could be as trivial as a letter of evaluation that the student doesn't. So we've gone to trying to build our own application, which we hope to have up and running, that will integrate all the custom requests that through a decision tree. And so I would hate to, this is not a small undertaking, nor inexpensive. I would like to keep what we're building. Is that possible? For graduate.
Graduate has never been
I thought so.
required.
And it won't be under any circumstances.
Not at this point.
Okay.
No, and our goal, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that UT Dallas, out of frustration with the Apply Texas at the graduate level, evolved its own system for graduate applications. The interesting thing is that Apply Texas and Joanne and our friend here have to be congratulated. We actually did get a capability now on Apply Texas that undergraduates who are familiar with Apply Texas will automatically go and address Apply Texas for graduate. Okay, it's just a natural tendency because they're familiar with it. And what was happening in the past was that there was a disclaimer that it wasn't available. So that kind of turned them off. Thanks to our friend here, we've actually been able now to get a directive to the web page that we use for admissions on the Applied Texas graduate app.
That's what I was.
Okay, and that has worked very nicely, and we thank you for that. We actually are now not only have one application with all the nuances of the program, we've actually evolved into 3 that are tailored to the particular requirements of each program. And I suspect we're probably going to stay with that particular format at UT Dallas.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that the UT system, half the components of the UT system are using MR. And I think the trend within UT system, except for UT Dallas, is to move to MR, not applied Texas.
But we just want to make sure that any changes, because our IT worked so hard to get everything. Right now we do the payment, we do everything through Applied Texas, and it's working very
That's
good
fine.
for us. That there wouldn't be any changes that would require our IT to go in, and then we are the ones who have been using it for 3-4 years, have to go back and revisit how we are interfacing.
Exactly. And again, the focus of the graduate application has always been there. We've always had, Michelle is the chair of the subcommittee for graduate application. So we've always had a subcommittee for graduate application, but to the extent of how many, or what the participation of other institutions other than the 2 big institutions that use the graduate application, I don't know. And that's one of the tasks that I told them, that they needed to focus more on reaching out and getting more participation on the subcommittees. For the membership of subcommittees to be made up of people or staff not in the committee itself. So you don't have to be a member of Applied Texas Advisory Committee to participate in any subcommittee that Applied Texas has. So we've kind of encourage the chairs to reach out to their constituents, and then start getting some of that membership, build up some of that membership, so that we can get better feedback.
Is there a chance that we'll ever have an ability through Applied Texas to upload documents, which is the biggest time-consuming thing with all of our staffs?
So that's something that we're looking at with the nursing applications. So the way that we're envisioning the nursing application to be, because nursing is so unique, and maybe the uniqueness is the same as graduate application, as a graduate process. With nursing, the student is already in their institutional system. So with the nursing, what we're trying to create is create a system within the system. So the applications themselves are going to be stored within Applied Texas, and the review is going to happen in Applied Texas. So that you will have to be able to do the uploadable. So we're looking at that functionality for the nursing application.
So while you're looking at it for the nursing, I mean, I guess my question is I applaud that they're now asking for our feedback. I guess I want to see that we're giving feedback, and then that becomes something. So that if this issue of uploading documents has been there for a long time and has been brought up at Applied Texas, and what the response has always been is just undergrad doesn't need it, so now we're not doing it.
It's not that undergrad doesn't need it, it's that the cost has been analyzed a couple of times. So, again, if we're looking at this holistic thing of trying to move from sending the applications to the institutions, but the institutions can come in and do the review, or anybody at the institution, as long as they have the access that they need. That's changing the dynamics of the system. With the upload picture, that has been brought up. The cost has been the major setback on that. If we wanted to do it with the graduate application is not even part of the allocation cost of how Applied Texas is being paid. Apply Texas is a very cheap product if you think about it. We're only paying $680,000 a year for 1.4 million applications. So we could be looking at that capability, but we also need to start looking at the funding of that additional cost for a group that is not really, for an application that is not really a part of the application. So
it's sounding probably
it's sounding
that's sort of sounding like.
It sounded probably yes if institutions are willing to pay for it.
Well, we're paying one way or another. We're paying in terms of labor or in terms of outsourcing to some unit. But here's what I'm reminded of. One of the big delay factors is we asked our students to wait a couple of days to get an ID number that they can then put on all the support documents. So when the support documents come in, it can be an easy match. Otherwise, it's hugely labor intensive. So I'm thinking, okay, I go to a retail department store. They ask me if I want a credit card so I can get a 10% discount. Immediately, I get a number and I can start using it right then and there. Why can't we do the same thing for our students? Give them an ID number as soon as they apply. They put it on all support documents, boom, done. Does it seem too easy? Maybe, but you know, if they figured it out in the bigger retail world.
Joanne, as soon as they start an application, they do have an application number.
Yeah.
The institution does have that the ability to get that application number and use the application number for documentation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we're working on we're testing the TREX integration within Apply Texas. So the TREX is the system that you use to transfer transcripts from high school to high school to college, and sometimes college to college. So whenever a student applies, that request is going to be done, or the system will ask if they want the system to request the transfer for him or her. Once a transcript comes back, it's going to come back with that number, with the application number, so it's like an automatic matching. So you do have the capability right now of telling students to use the application number as their ID for all the documents, so that you have an easier match and you don't have to wait 3 days.
Michelle, how do you want to do it? Because you said you use it for grade.
You do, and I, to some degree, I have to claim a little bit of ignorance because we have a fantastic graduate international admissions center, and the operations. I'm not sure exactly how all of that system runs, but we have our own internal system for accepting uploaded documents, and so it sounds like that's a shortcoming on the graduate side of the Apply Texas application. And so it sounds like what we've done at UT Austin is sort of built our own systems to supplement.
We have
these
staff
sorts of
that
things.
uploads. Our staff gets copies and then uploads out. Whether they get them electronically or they get them paper copies, our staff sits and wants to upload those into our own system that we can pull.
Deborah?
I just have a question, just so I understand. So what is the expense associated with uploading documents by applicants? Is it storage capacity, or where does that expense come in?
Okay, so I have the Apply Texas technical team with me. And I think that they
It's primarily storage.
storage.
That's getting cheaper all the time.
So Jose, it seems like something that would make Apply Texas attractive at the graduate level, if what I'm going to summarize what I've heard, is that we do have the need to be able to upload documents of various types. And right now, people are using a variety of systems, and some of them are pleased with them, and some of them are spending a lot of money on them. It depends. But it seems like it would make it something attractive for our many Texas schools if that ability were there. And they are spending lots of money on all these other systems. So it may be that as you're looking at the cost effectiveness, you might want to actually talk to the graduate level to see what they would be willing to pay for that. Am I correct? Because they're paying for it now in huge amounts of personnel and huge amounts of, time and energy. And it might be something that could really be helpful to improve access for graduate education.
I think one other question that, and I think you alluded to it, Joanne, a little bit, it's the same issue on the main campus, is that undergraduate applications get preference, and they don't even start pushing the graduate applications out to the departments. Well, they've dealt with the undergraduate. And so it's only one aspect, that question of the cost. It's also the timing of when things get pushed out. Everything's decentralized. And so the application has to get to the department. And it's just a policy on the campus. Undergraduates get the preference. So, College Station has already built a big infrastructure where they upload the documents already. So I don't know where the cost savings is, but there's also another problem of handling the data when it gets to the campus.
Well, isn't it, am I under the wrong impression to understand that the data is actually separated?
It is.
And then you guys put it together to send it to us so that we have to separate it again? Instead of sending it to us separate?
It comes through one central server. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're looking at that issue.
That would be really helpful. We're actually just having to undo what you had to do.
Yeah, of
Which
getting
seems
the
to be crazy.
application or the data in two different sets. One for graduates and one for undergraduates.
That would be terrific.
But Kevin, you are right. That's a campus decision on how you handle it
I thought it was because
internally. I don't have that issue at my
No,
university.
it just might be how it affects the overall cost.
Yeah.
Whether
Yes.
that's-
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a key point. Okay, anything else? Charles?
There are some general private application systems that are being developed. It
Yes.
seems like there's a market for them. The Embark, I think, is well established and it's sort of the catalog. And so I wonder if, as you examine the applied Texas for graduate, could you possibly develop a comparison to some of these application systems so that we know what the trade-offs are associated with using Embark versus using the applied Texas full time, and maybe some insight into the cost trade-offs that are there too. That's
We can
possible.
probably do that. And we can probably test the subcommittee to do that.
Well, I think those of us who've used Apply Texas have been through many iterations of trying to get it where we want it, as we had the capability to do that. And we found it very helpful, except for not being able to upload documents. And then that's something that we have to do besides. And so I think if there are ways that we could make it more accessible, because I think a good point was made, I believe by you, Austin, that students are used to it. It's something, that they could use, but it's got to be usable. It's really got to meet the needs in order, and Charlie, that's what you were saying about the comparisons there.
I did see the data. The data does provide where students are, they start an application, but they don't complete it or
Right.
submit it. It's very low for graduate. Well, it's not really low. I think it's 25,000 applications are saved but not submitted. So, it's something that we can look at the uploadable, if that's the issue for those students applying through Apply or starting an application through Apply Texas, and then they know that the applicability is not there, so they go directly to the institution, or
I don't think that's that would be very interesting to survey them. I think there are some other things that we found out, because that's very helpful data. We've gotten that from y'all who started an application and didn't finish it. That's a great group if you're trying to, bring in your applicants. That's a great group to contact. But I don't think the uploadability is that issue.
Actually, they usually finish the Apply Texas app, for us at least, and then never get all their documents in because it becomes such
that's
a
the problem.
hassle
Yes.
to try to submit all those documents.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
because it's not one easy
exactly.
place that it's done. And so that's what happens to us, is we actually lose the process, lose the people in the process, because they're having to send this by mail, they're having to send this another different way. it depends on what they're having to get to us, and they're having to do it in multiple different ways, and that becomes, so they actually complete the Apply Texas, but it never gets completed to be able to be used, because we don't get all their.
Now, one
documents.
question, like if this is possible and if this is implemented, would you want to have all the documents uploaded at one time while the application is submitted, or have the student come back and be able to submit additional documentation at a later date?
I think it depends what the documentation is, and of course, I think for every institution that's going to be different, because if we're talking about uploading transcripts, well, transcripts get updated a semester later. But, you know, if I look at the way we collect documents now, we tell applicants, please don't send us everything piecemeal. Once you have everything together, you know, letters of recommendation, so on and so forth, those all need to be put together. Otherwise, it's a never-ending, you know, matching system in our office. So, it's just my 2 cents.
And I'm not trying to sell that part, but what attracted me to NWARC is just this issue, and that is that there's visibility for everybody on what has been sent in. So when they apply, the application's there, but then everybody, faculty as well as the staff, know what has been submitted to complete that application. It's all part of the system. So it's the visibility on what's missing that really is what we have.
And the ability to run.
Then we can follow up on what's missing. The faculty can follow up with the students on what's missing. And it helps us to process it. We don't have to follow up with phone call or emails. It's right there.
And we've actually kind of duplicated a system like that at home. The base that tries to do something similar to that.
One question, if a student went to Texas as an undergrad and applies to a grad program, will their information automatically be populated because they have an app already in the system?
I think we purged that information after 21 months.
The applications are purged after 3 cycles, so 3 years basically, but they set up profiles that are not currently open, and then applications are attached to those profiles. So say they fill out an application to an institution, they can choose to copy all the information in that application to another application. So basically they can do exactly.
The only thing that doesn't transfer is essays, because institutions have their own essay prompts and custom questions, which again are customized to the institution, so those do not copy from one to the application.
Well, I think once there's uploadable documents, that would help too, because the custom questions are like this long answer can be, so it's a very small amount, barely say anything. And for for us, that's a real problem. So we use those less and less, and again, they're sending us those documents. So once there's uploadable, a lot of those custom questions will become some of those documents, because right now there's just not enough space for them to say much. I can't remember what's 45, something like that. The limit is really.
It's about 1 page for a text answer.
Yeah, I think if you set it up, you get a full page of an answer.
You can, but what happens is when you upload it to an imaging system, the only thing that uploads is what's in that little box, not the whole page.
Okay.
Exactly. And then it becomes a problem.
Exactly.
It's like an onion, you know?
So it becomes like a 45 character or something like that.
Okay, well, I think we've gotten some good information, and I think as you work on the graduate side with your graduate subcommittee, talking to some of these graduate deans would really, really be helpful in their experiences.
And Jose, thank you so much for opening up the conversation with us, because I think that's important. I appreciate the time.
And I think the uploadable thing is something reachable. I mean, especially with when it, not to minimize the number of applications, but with the number of applications that are being submitted is manageable, so that we can do a pilot and do some cost analysis on that. If we can just do it with the, because we're going to have, I mean, that's the other thing that we have to do with the nursing application. So.
Right.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Just one closing comment. I have to say that when I decided to take this on and I called the coordinating board, I was ready for battle. I was ready to call, no way, what are you thinking? God, Jose, sure, fine, we'll work with you, we can meet with you. It was amazing. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
It's been a very pleasant experience.
Thanks to all of you for coming and answering our questions. That's been helpful. Okay, I'm going to take something else out of order because a few of you may have to leave, I know, at about 2:45. And the one thing we have on our agenda that requires a quorum to vote is number 13. So I want to make sure we don't end up without a quorum. We did have that happen one time about 2:45. I think some of you remember. We don't want to be there again. This is the time that we need to elect a new chair and a new vice chair for our group. As you know, we did, you're wondering, well, do we have a vice chair now? No, we don't. Our vice chair did resign, Dorothy Flanagan. I think most of you know that Dorothy resigned. And so we would like to have a chair and a vice chair for next year. And so I would like for you to kind of think about that for a few minutes, and we would like to open the floor for nominations. An interesting piece that sort of interacts with this is that some of you may be going off, but I think if you were elected as an officer, your university would probably commission you, I'm thinking, re-nominate you. Because there are a lot of people going off this time. And James, I was talking to Alan. I understand that the call for new members has gone out, and that went out several weeks ago.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So we're gathering nominations now. We'll make some staff selections of those, run them by Rex, run them by David Gardner, the commissioner, and then now, again, thanks to Senate Bill 215, all of our advisory committee appointments have to be approved by the board. You guys are now working ostensibly directly for the board and not for a staff. So that's why it takes a little while, a little bit longer than it used to complete the process. Basically by July, after the board meeting, we should have new members officially in place, ready to come in for the next meeting, whenever that is.
Okay. All right.
Could I start the nomination process and suggest Charlie take over as the new chair?
Okay. That's great. Do we have other
My
nominees?
first meeting, and I'm nominated. Well, there you go. You see, that's what
But,
happens when you show
but
up.
Charlie's been here for 10 years,
He has,
not
see.
really on the committee, so he probably knows more than most of us.
Yeah, he's been a very regular attendee of these meetings, so much so that he's on the lunch list. Even
Not the coffee list.
Do I have other nominees?
Also need a co-chair.
Okay, but we're not doing one at a time?
Let's do one at a time.
Well, just keep that in mind.
Oh, okay, yeah, yes, we need a vice chair or co-chair, whatever we want to call it also. Vice chair, yes.
Can we close the nominations?
You may do that.
We close the nominations?
Okay. All in favor? Well, does someone else want to second that we close?
Second.
Okay. I didn't get it. Okay. I think it was you, Deborah, that I got as the second. I don't know if you're taking that. Okay. So all in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Okay. So now let's vote on our one nominee, Dr. Lackey from University of Texas, Brownsville. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Charlie, I didn't send you out. I didn't think it was necessary to do that.
I'd like to thank everybody. I appreciate it. My situation is very tenuous at the University of Texas at Brownsville, but I have really enjoyed GEAC, as I mentioned earlier, over the last 10 years. I feel it's a very important part of our university system. I've enjoyed working with James and Alan over these years, and this is such a dynamic time in education, really incredible time. And I think that GEAC, the privilege that we have to have GEAC is really terrific, because we have a sounding board here that can impact our institutions. So I'm very honored to be chair next year. everybody's issues will be solved.
Charlie, if that happens, we're going to think you're a magician.
He'd be next up for canonization.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so we also need to select a vice chair today. So are there nominations for vice chair?
I would like to see if Candy, I would like to step up and be vice chair for next year.
Candy Tayebi. Are there others? Other nominations? Okay, thanks.
Second.
Second for that, thank you. All in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
Okay, I think we're going to do the same thing. We're going to, we have one candidate, Dr. Tayebi from Sam Houston State. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Well, it looks like we have a chair and a vice chair, and a good group at that. And it really is a great opportunity for y'all to work with James and Alan to sort of shape what we look at. And they're always open to ideas, and they are open to ideas from all of you. So I hope that if any of you who have things that you think we need to be discussing and we need to offer input on would let them know, that is really important, because they're very willing to have us put those on the agenda. So I think that that part is really important. Well, good. We got that done before the magic stroke of losing a quorum, which I didn't want to happen here this afternoon. We have some other important discussions, and we're going to, as I said, we will end on time. I've taken things a little bit out of order, but I think I'll go ahead and go back to number 10 at this point, the discussion of the degree designations, because I think that was particularly important. And I'm going to let y'all sort of lead us here on the way we go.
Okay, I'll lead off on this one. So this is something that some of the staff have noticed as somewhat of an emerging trend. It's not very widespread yet, but we've noticed a move towards greater specificity in degree designations. Not just degree titles, right? Social work, for instance. So let me give you some examples so you'll see what I'm talking about. So rather than a Master of Science in Social Work, a Master of Social Work. Rather than a Master of Science, say, in Environmental Engineering, it is a Master of Engineering in Civil and Environmental Engineering, degree in Civil and Environmental Engineering. Or I've got one more example here. Moving from a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice to a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice in Criminal Justice. And I don't know whether employers are becoming so dim-witted that they can't figure out that a Master of Science in something is that something, that you have to repeat the discipline twice in the name of the designation. I have no idea where this is coming from or why it's happening, but it's not just one institution. It's not just at one level. It's actually not just graduate level. I can see it occasionally happen in bachelor's, but I think it happens a little more often at the graduate level. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. A, how widespread is this? Is this an emerging trend? Do you see this proliferating? Are we going to go towards greater and greater specificity in the way we indicate what these degree designations are? What do you see as the value, if any, in that? Is this an area where there should be any sort of uniformity or standardization? In any of these questions, I'm eager to hear about, because I have no idea why this is happening.
I could start out with one thing that we saw at our institution. We actually were contacted by the coordinating board. We used to have things like a master's of science in agriculture, and then literally a hyphen, and then it would be more specific. And we were told, try to get rid of, we want you to get rid of all those, and we want you instead to make them the master's science in whatever the more specific thing was.
Yeah.
And so that was the first move towards that for us. As soon as that happened, then several of ours came back and said, well, now it's a master's of science in construction, whatever, and the ag is left out. So now to be able to take care of that, we want it to be a Masters of Agriculture in whatever. So part of it was actually the move. It came as a request from the coordinating board for us to make some of those changes. Okay, so that's the first thing that happened. So that's one of the things. It's not true in all those cases, but it is definitely in some of those cases that started to happen because the request came first to do the first thing, which then caused other problems that happen. Okay. The second thing is that we are seeing in some of the areas requests from employers about some specificity in the degree so they can tell the difference between one and the other. Especially in areas where there's an emphasis in something that's slightly, it's related, but it's slightly different than that program. And so they want to see that, and we don't have good nomenclature here, I think, to be able to handle those situations. So I know we would be open to some suggestions on how to handle that and to make it more uniform. I think to have some of that might not be a bad thing, but right now I know that's part of our problem.
Okay, so at least part of it is that the employers are telling the students, the graduates, or telling you directly?
Telling our grad programs and our undergrad. We're being contacted actually by employers and saying, it's really hard for us to tell what this is. How can we tell this different from this? And asking for more specificity. So we're starting to give that to them. And we used to do it with a little hyphen, and that's gone. So.
Okay, that's very helpful.
So there's a second thing that I noticed. I had a meeting, I guess it was a week or so ago, with the chair of the accounting department at the College of Business. And they are creating local concentrations, like a Master of Science in Taxation with a local concentration in IMAP. Well, that makes perfect sense given the demand and the reason to want to do that. But at the same time, they said, well, we have to create a local concentration with a Master of Science in Taxation with a local concentration in taxation. I said, no, you don't have to do that. It'll just be a Master of Science in Taxation. It took me a while to understand the concern. The concern is when they go in to apply, if they see all these local concentrations but don't see taxation, they're going to think that they have to pick one of these others. So I convinced them that we could program around that, and they forego that. But I suspect you're seeing some of that if people are creating local concentrations, they're trying to preserve the original degree within that list.
But James, where are you noticing this? Are you noticing it in the application for new degrees?
No.
Where's it coming from?
It's coming from requests to change existing degrees.
Now, can any of that happen as a consequence or a casualty of the low producing programs?
I would say that's probably
part of it too.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
That may have been, of course. Now, I don't think that. I'm pretty sure that we are not perceiving that. In other words, you folks at the institutions may see that and know that it's arising out of it.
We amalgamated two mathematics
Right.
degrees into one mathematics degree, and then everybody complained about having done that, and now they're going to go back and go to something else. But anyway, the bottom line was that it was the amalgamation that actually reduced two authorized degrees into one in response to the low producing agenda. I'm just trying to understand where it's showing up for you.
And that may be happening, but the thing is that we've seen some of that over the years. I've seen some of that, and that's a little more recognizable because then, for instance, you might say have a Master of Arts in French and a Master of Arts in Iberian Spanish, and now you consolidate them and it's a Master of Arts in Romantic languages or something like that, right? But here, what I'm talking about is going further than that and actually changing not just Master of Arts in, Master of Science in. And that in is what you're changing. Iberian languages, Romantic languages. But actually say like a Master of Languages in Spanish. With an emphasis in Spanish, instead of just saying, a Master of Arts in Spanish. Now it's a Master of Languages, Master of Foreign Languages with a concentration in Spanish, where you're changing the degree designation as well as the actual title of the discipline.
It's not an MA or an MS, now it's an M whatever.
Yeah, a Master's of Criminal Justice in Criminal Justice, a Master's of Social Work in Social Work. Right?
And some of them are copying like the Masters of Music, which has been around for a long time. But I think other disciplines are beginning to copy some of that. So the Masters of Music has been around for ages. But I think people look and say, wait a minute, if there's a master's of music, shouldn't there be a master's of agriculture, master's of English, et cetera?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if this is mention worthy, but I know at UT Austin there is a lot of confusion that exists when I'm working with faculty across campus between the difference between a degree title and a field of study.
Yes.
I mean, that is just, that we always, that's always a good place to start the conversation. And so I wonder if, and a lot of that also translates for them into what's going to be on the transcript, what's going to be on the diploma, how are our systems set up, and so if we really get down to a nuts and bolts sort of level and think about, well, if our degree title in all instances does not capture the field of study, then perhaps there's a blank field of study, field within our systems, and we need to populate both of those fields. So we need the coordinating board's inventory to say the Master of Science in Information Studies with a major in Information Studies.
Yes.
Does that make sense? I mean, that just is a really
I
nuts
think
and bolts.
So. And that speaks to an issue I've spoken to you about, probably some of the others, which is that we track the degree designation, we track the degree title, the program title. But you may have a bunch of tracks, and that's especially true in graduate education. You may have a engineering program, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's even more specific, maybe it's biomedical engineering. But now, within that biomedical engineering PhD, there's a track for students that want to go more the mechanical route, ones that want to do the more electrical route, ones that want to do the nanobot route, or what have you. But we don't track all those concentrations.
Right.
So maybe that's a way that people in the discipline, your faculty, are trying to signal to perhaps potential employers, hey, here's not just what I have my degree in, but here's what I specialized in. Here's my track, my concentration.
And that's what those hyphens used to do for us. Exactly the same thing.
James, I mean, again, I'm not sure if this is the same, but in engineering, we always had a Master's of Engineering and a Master of Science in Engineering to designate the more professional track. That was the Master of Engineering. The lower track, that's more for practitioners. I mean, a lot of people in ag, they wanted to differentiate between students doing their thesis and non-thesis by calling a Master of Science in ag for people doing thesis and a Master of Agriculture for people not doing thesis. So this is the way the programs are seeing it, is the Master of Ag is more for the practitioners, while the Master of Science in Ag is more for the research that are going to continue for doctoral.
Well, and I think that's very evident in like the doctor, think about it, Doctor of Nursing Practice, Doctor of Physical Therapy. Those are the professional fields. We also have PhD in nursing science, PhD in physical therapy, but those are the research degrees, just like you're saying. And so, like the example you gave of MSW, that one is a practitioner degree in social work, and that one is ancient. I mean, I've never known of anything other than MSW. But I think that there really is a distinction there. But I do agree with Austin that I think you could have seen some of this in response to low-producing programs, because one of y'all's directives was that we could combine programs. And I know in music, I used to have exactly what you had, Candy, for agriculture. I had vocal performance and, whatever, wind performance, whatever it was. And so some of those became low producing. It didn't save me any faculty or it didn't save me any money, but I did what y'all said, and they were no longer low producing. They were now just a master's in music. And I then fit the criteria here, and a person can look at their transcript. Or the other thing that we've done, and some of y'all have done this also, I know, is that we have created some graduate certificates within degrees to designate that they have completed a certain coherent sequence of courses in a specialization area, and we award them the graduate certificate at the local level, and it's on their transcript. So it's transcripted. Then not only do they have this degree, but they have this graduate certificate. It's a little more paperwork for us, but it was the way to help employers to see that a person had taken that coherent sequence and had qualifications there.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Yeah.
And the local concentration of response.
Yes, exactly.
We consolidated our music MMs to an MA with local concentration. Right?
Yes, exactly.
At the same time, on the undergrad level, we used to have pretty strict definitions of what a BS was versus a BA.
Yes.
And those have disappeared.
Blurred. They're gone.
Completely blurred. It used to be you have to have this much of foreign language and this philosophy, et cetera, or this much of science. Those have disappeared
It
on our
doesn't
level
look that way.
And so because of that blurring, I think that's part of what's happened too, is that is just part.
Has,
So, I mean,
has that happened
We're
with
just
the
across the
MA,
boat.
MS distinction as well? would you
Yes, and in
say?
fact, we have several
Okay.
degrees where you wouldn't think there, we have the history, a history MS as well as an MA, which you wouldn't think there would be.
Okay. That makes sense. Jives with what I've seen in other places. I remember University of Houston was redoing some of their graduate level architecture programs, and they had different designations for the master's architecture degrees that were practitioner degrees versus the other Master of Architecture degree that was for people who did architecture-related things but weren't necessarily architects and were in the construction industry and needed to know some architecture stuff but not be practicing architects.
And ironically, as he was saying, one way, our music ones have gone the opposite way, with the MM being the more theoretical and the MA being the practitioner degree. So we've actually gone the opposite way with the master, with the music
That's
ones.
historical, yeah.
Uh-huh,
yes,
exactly.
Yes.
Again.
Yeah.
Well, just in summary, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think in some cases there may be something that would have been very well understood regionally, then when you start playing nationally or internationally, it looks very different. So, for example, I can give myself as an example. So I have a Master of Science in nursing, but it's a Master of Science with a major in nursing from TWU, and I had to explain to myself 9 ways from Sunday in Ohio and Pennsylvania, because they're all MSNs up there. There are no just Master of Science
And we get questions
people.
all the time about that. Yes,
So-
why is it not?
So the boards of nursing are, what kind of degree do you have? You're not qualified to be the dean of nursing. Well, yes, I am. So I think that there may be some influences externally on programs that may make them need to be more specific, whereas we think, I always thought my Master of Science was awesome until I left Texas, so.
That's why we changed our school psychology to a
specialist.
Specialist degree for the very same reason. It transferred outside of the state of Texas a lot better.
Exactly.
And I think what Mohammed was saying, Master in Engineering, here it is kind of lesser of a degree.
Exactly.
However, in Michigan, Master of Engineering is actually higher of a degree.
Yes.
The only way you get Master of Engineering, you have BS in engineering or electrical engineering.
Oh.
Because my degree is in physics, and then basically I took all my courses. They would never give me Master of Engineering. Mine is called Master of Science in Engineering. That's why I'm just a scientist. I'm not like a true engineering.
But I agree with that, but that still fits the definition here, because you have to be a practicing engineer to be able to get into the Master of Engineering. So,
Okay, well, this has been very illuminating for me. Just to kind of bring it back around to an actionable point. Based on this discussion, it sounds like we could, if we try to standardize this. I'm not sure what utility there would be, given that some people are naming things to try to deal with a professional accrediting body. Some people are naming things to deal with a national market, and jobs are up in the north. Other people are naming things to deal with stuff more on a Texas basis. So, do we want to, would it be practical for us to bring this back as an item and for us to work on it through our usual subcommittee and staff process, if at the end we're all going to say, well, yeah, we could standardize this, but we wouldn't want to make it mandatory because people are trying to serve different needs through this process. Do you see any utility here in us mandating anything, standardizing anything?
I don't think any of us have experienced issues. And I would say it's not worth as many people as are involved in as many things as you've just described as influences there. I think it would be probably not a good use of time to do that if it really has not caused issues. And nobody's described a real issue.
Yeah, not even from us. It does take a little of our staff time, but at this time it's not wholesale, so as long as, all of you don't decide to change 20% of your graduate degree programs in title and designation, it's not an issue. We can handle the kind of slow but steady volume of little changes here and there that we're doing.
Well, it wasn't just the staff workload, too. We were concerned about students. If students were suffering as they transfer to PhD programs or into the workforce, that a student coming with a Master of Science from one program might be at a disadvantage from a Texas student who has an MNOPQ in some other degree designation. that if there's no national standard, if we're making up degree designations, that our students would be at a disadvantage.
Nowadays, people have to look at the degree content
They do.
that they are accepting because for the reasons of the interdisciplinarity approach, people are coming at you from 14 different directions. It's the content or the substance of the degree that is being asked for to be accepted towards the new degree. That's really what determines. It's not just the title of the degree, it's the content. So.
Well, and the more narrowly you define something, if they're going to have to reinvent themselves in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, it seems like you're putting them out of the market. It just doesn't seem like a...
Unless you want the extra workload, Jim, leave it alone.
I think I'll be happy to leave this.
I think you've got other things to do. Okay, there was one more discussion that I believe that Alan wanted to have, and we've got enough time, I think, to do that. The discussion of the dissertation advising and publication. There were some questions there.
No, actually, in the interest of time, it might be best to table this for our joint discussion with LTAC, because it had come up at a previous meeting about how the traditional dissertation with the committee might be an endangered species, and technology gives us new options for that. And so perhaps we can discuss that in the broader context of learning technology in our joint meeting.
I think that's a good idea.
Are you referencing the makeup of the committee itself, or the impact of the work of the committee?
That and just the solitary project of one student with a book-length monograph. The changes in the publication industry, maybe not making book-length monographs such a great professional goal in the first place. Issues like that. There are alternatives being floated out there in the dissertation. It might be an interesting discussion time. So give it some thought between now and then. It would be interesting if you could collect some information from your colleagues about what your doctoral students are doing for the equivalent of a dissertation, maybe instead of the traditional 300-page research project. It would be interesting to report back and see what other institutions are doing. Capstone projects, collaborative projects.
Okay. The last thing, other than just discussing the next meeting day, is any issues that have come to mind today as we've been discussing that you think need to be on our list of things that we would want to discuss in the future at GEAC meetings?
These don't have to be well-cooked ideas at this point. Just broad topics that you think might be interesting to hear from your colleagues or to give feedback to the coordinating board about.
Jennifer, I would say something that comes up for us in the context of distance learning. And so I don't know if it comes up for us differently or the same, or so I throw it out there, is when you decide not to register in another state and you have graduate students who have to do some kind of practicum, or they want to go to their home state and do something where they're not necessarily traditional distance learners, but they still have something to do there. How would
we triggered physical presence in their state for one of their state's residents. Exactly right.
So it's that, and then the other one is are there legal implications to denying certain applicants access to an online program because they choose not to register in their state?
I think we have that issue with the hiring of TAs as well.
Oh, yes.
Same thing happens.
It triggers physical presence.
You have a physical presence now.
Yes.
It's a whole slew of paperwork and things that we have to register there, or we can't offer them assistantships.
So I think something that would be wise when we do this meeting is to talk about state authorization, but specifically Rex is the representative, I understand, to the state authorization reciprocal agreement group, and he could probably come and update us. For a while, I think things were looking pretty good. Now I'm not certain that's going to happen, but it does require that a state be a member. I think the first 2 states now have their legislatures have acted. Ours could not act until they meet again anyway, and most of us are going to have to make some decisions even before that. But I think the state authorization piece is huge. for all of us.
Sarah, right? S-A-R-A.
Yes, state authorization.
The latest I heard from Rex is that we anticipate there will be more for us to do, that the feds are going to push a lot of the responsibility for this onto the states through reciprocity.
Exactly.
We'll have to certify everyone from our state so that when you go out to other states, we can vouch for you. And likewise, anyone that comes into the state, their home state, whatever their base is going to vouch for them to operate here.
So it won't be all the individual.
And Rex, we're hoping, we're talking about, yes, thank you for coming back.
You walked in at just the right moment.
Just the right moment. We're talking about Sarah, and you had told me and a few others recently that you anticipate the feds are going to push a lot of Sarah responsibility onto the states, and supposedly that some guidelines for this are going to hopefully come out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, they're supposed to be finished with their negotiated rulemaking on this. They were actually supposed to have finished the week before last, I think. So, and what I've been reading so far is that they're supportive of the reciprocity agreement, Sarah, but they're also supportive of the states, how should I put this, doing more to ensure the quality of programs.
More than having accredited programs. That's
Yes.
the key thing. It
And
can't be based upon
Right.
our all having accreditation.
And so what they're saying is that we can't rely any longer on accreditation alone, either regional accreditation or accreditation from any of the other recognized bodies as well. And what would happen under the reciprocity agreement would be then the states would be responsible for their own institutions, so to speak. And what we don't know yet is just exactly what they mean by more and what all that would entail. Now, we do know that institutions are responsible for stipulating, like with a new program, for example, that they follow, like particularly in distance education, that they follow best practices as established by SACS and by the coordinating board. But what we don't know is what kind of form that's going to take in terms of trying to verify that you actually do this. I'm hoping for something simple and uncomplicated, but
Never.
Hope springs eternal. But we're dealing with the Department of Education, so I doubt if it'll be simple or uncomplicated. And it strikes me as being one of those sort of unfunded mandate kind of things. We'll get stuck with doing something. And so, I'm thinking about it not only about what we have to do, but also in terms of what that's going to mean for staff and what it's going to mean for you guys.
Well, and Rex, I think all of us that have a lot of distance are already using tons of staff time
to do those
to fill out the paperwork. Each state is almost like doing a mini SAC study.
Yeah, they're huge.
And everyone is different, and so it's quite complicated.
Well, and I think the reciprocity stuff will actually make that a lot simpler.
That would be great.
That would be nice.
I know somebody from UT Arlington was telling me at the last Sarah regional meeting that they spend $350,000 to $400,000 a year on competitive huge distance learning programs.
Yes.
But they spend a lot of money trying to comply with everybody else,
Yes.
and this is the money they spend to send to other states and so forth. And I know that institutions are now beginning to get letters from other states asking about why are you not in compliance, here's what it's going to take, and more importantly, here's how much it's going to cost you to get in compliance. So, and it may be that the Sarah folks are a little ambitious about this. I hope not. They have said publicly that they hope that there'll be 20 institutions signed up by this fall and 40 by next fall. But for some states, this also could mean a fairly significant loss in revenue for them, too, because they're going to lose a lot of that money that they're now getting from you guys. You'll be paying to Sarah instead of to each of those several states, which will save the institutions a lot of money. So, one of the things we can kind of hope for is that internally in each state, then the home institutions say, yeah, look, we're going to save a lot of money by not having to deal with other states, so it would be a wash somehow. But the one thing that does bother me a little bit and concern me to some extent is this whole notion of the feds now saying that we don't want to accept just accreditation by itself. There's got to be something more. and it's going to be up to the states to enforce that, whatever it is. And I'm hopeful that we'll find out something a little more concrete sometime in the next month or two.
Okay.
That'll give us some sense of what that is.
Well, when we have our joint GEAC and LTAC meeting, we think this would be a good update and discussion at that meeting. Yeah, it would be very good.
And hopefully we'll have something from
Yeah.
the feds that really give us some kind of direction about where we're going to be headed with this.
That would be great.
Kind of linked with the Jennifer is also what people are doing for assessments at
Yes.
the graduate level would be a great thing as well.
I agree with the graduate assessment.
Okay. Assessment of the programs, specifically the distance programs. Assessment of distance programs.
Yes. Any other agenda items we can consider for our next meeting?
Well, why don't we move on to the discussion of a next meeting date? And Alan, I'll let you kind of take that.
At minimum, GEAC should probably meet twice a year. That was what was agreed on at the last GEAC meeting. We could meet up to 4 times a year, depending on the necessity of it. So at least 6 months from now, which would be what, August, September? Yeah. Perhaps early in the semester, September or October, would be a good time to aim for one.
And I think if we can get it set up with LTAC, that sounds like the best thing. Yeah. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. There are some of you. Please.
Can I assume that a September meeting would be preferable to an August meeting? Because I asked because when I asked GEAC about the joint meeting, they expressed interest in doing something in late summer in July or August. I was a little skeptical that everybody would be able to make that, but would an August meeting be better than a September one? September, okay. I figured you'd say that, okay.
Well, it is time for us to adjourn, but I did want to note that several of us are rolling off, and this will be last meetings for several people. Joanne. Now, that is unless your university renominates you and you are chosen again. Okay, so let's put it that way. Joanne is rolling off from A&M Corpus Christi. Dimitri, you were filling a term, I guess, and it has you rolling off. Ronald had to leave, but he is rolling off from University of Houston Clear Lake. And Debbie Thorne from Texas State in San Marcos. And Vernon Tesh, who was here. Oh, okay, is going off, and then Jambor is going off. So that, yeah, we're losing a lot of good folks, but maybe some of these folks will be renominated and will be back here. I want to thank all of you for your good attention, and thank you for working with all of us on GEAC. It's been a great year, and we look forward to a good year for y'all next year with Candy and Charles. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks also to Jennifer, our fearless leader. Yes. For the last 2 years. It's done a terrific job.
Everybody have safe travels.
Mic off now?
Do what?
The recorder.